Okay, welcome everyone to our Tuesday, June 2nd, 2021. We're having adjustments to one of the director's chairs here. To our regular business meeting of the EBMUD Board of Directors. In accordance with the Governor's Executive Order N-0821, which suspends portions of the Brown Act, this meeting will be conducted remotely, even though we're all here. A physical location has not been provided for this meeting. It is, I will just say, a hybrid meeting. We have all the board members here and some of the staff in the audience, but the public is invited to join us in any kind of public comment through the Zoom meeting. Just I want to announce that the Redistricting Ad Hoc Committee and the Finance Administration Committee met this morning and will report out under item 21. Roll call, please, Madam Secretary.
Director Coleman.
Present.
Director Katz.
Present.
Director McIntosh. Here. Director Mellon.
Present.
Director Patterson.
Present.
Director Young.
Here.
President Lenny.
Physically here. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. No time, but no sound delay.
All right. We have a number of presentations because we have such outstanding employees who have brought these kind of awards to us. Clifford, I'll let you introduce those.
Yeah, we have the wastewater department receiving 4 awards, and I will go through and read the recognition for each of the awards, and then we'll have the recipients come up and you'll have an opportunity to acknowledge the awards for them. So the district is guided by the values of stewardship, integrity, respect, and teamwork, which lay the groundwork for our actions, activities, and programs and support our success. Nowhere is this more evident than the 4 award recognitions being highlighted today. For the first award, our main wastewater treatment plant has been recognized for its safety practices, protocols, and record by the California Water Environment Association's Safety Plant of the Year Award and Water Environment Federation's George W. Burke Jr. Safety Award. Awards of this magnitude require teamwork and cooperation from all staff, and the district is proud to be recognized by CWEA and WEF for its commitment to safety. The CWEA and WEF awards are based on the number of injuries, lost time accidents, record keeping, in-house training, emergency response, and program implementation. They recognize the district's active and effective safety programs, safety record, and the wastewater department's commitment to fostering a culture of safety and health at the main wastewater treatment plant. The next 3 awards are for wastewater staff being recognized for their exemplary actions over the past year. For the first award, Jason Mitchell, Laboratory Supervisor, was recognized for Supervisor of the Year by CWEA, first place at the local and state levels. As Laboratory Supervisor, Jason recruited 15 chemists and technicians, which is approximately half the laboratory team. Jason invests time and energy developing his team by encouraging training, creating growth opportunities, and assigning challenging tasks. Jason's adept leadership became clear as the laboratories adapted to the coronavirus pandemic. When the laboratory suspended hands-on training, Jason created video tutorials to train analysts safely. When the district was concerned about a shortage of spray disinfectant, he led the development of a laboratory brand disinfectant. Jason's efforts to develop a resilient team were instrumental in the laboratory team's ability to quickly redistribute workloads while maintaining its full level of services, taking on new initiatives, and achieving major milestones. Jason's visionary thinking, dedication to staff, and enthusiasm about public service make him an exemplary leader for the wastewater industry and for the district. For the next award, James Hake, Associate Civil Engineer, was recognized as a CWEA Community Engagement and Outreach Person of the Year, both first place in the San Francisco Bay section and second place at the state level for his outreach actions supporting the wastewater tour program and pollution prevention outreach initiatives. When 2020 brought a shutdown of in-person tours, James led and was essential in the rapid transformation of the tour program into a virtual platform, which has proven to be extremely popular. His efforts and the new format resulted in a massive increase in summer tour attendees, from the typical 3 to 48 per month in 2019 to 300 to 400 per month in 2020. His leadership in providing tours has served as a model for others. James's critical thinking, creativity, and enthusiasm makes him an extremely effective spokesperson for the wastewater industry and for the district. And finally, Melissa Lash, research microbiologist, was recognized as one of the 2021 emerging leaders by CWEA and the California Association of Sanitation Agencies for her initiative and leadership skills in support of her team in response to the coronavirus pandemic. Melissa brings critical thinking, leadership skills, and sound scientific expertise to everything she does. This was particularly evident in her response to the pandemic. For example, after learning that the district was in critical need of hand sanitizer when the shelter-in-place orders were instituted last year, Melissa was instrumental in the development of an in-house method for the production of hand sanitizer, from research to raw materials to distribution. This was key in supporting the district's critical workers in their efforts to maintain water quality and protecting the environment. Her contributions established her as an emerging leader at the district and for the wastewater industry. Congratulations, James, Jason, and Melissa, and the entire wastewater department. These awards are recognition of a team that embodies the district's values and team and individual achievements. Eileen, you're accepting the award for the entire department.
Thank you for your great service, and it's really nice to have you here in person, to be able to recognize you, and to have some physical applause rather than that silent stuff we get on Zoom. So thank you for your outstanding efforts. So great to hear. All right. Does that cover all the awards or presentations?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. There are no announcements required from closed session. We're on to public comment now. This is the time for members of the public who wish to speak on on non-agenda items. If you want to speak on an agenda item, we'll take that up when we get to that agenda item. Comments on the non-agenda items are heard at the beginning of the meeting. When prompted, please state your name, affiliation, if applicable, and topic. Secretary will call each speaker in the order received. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. However, I have discretion to amend this time based on the number of speakers.
I'm sorry, you have 2 public comments, and Yvette Rivera, you should be able to unmute your mic. And your 3 minutes.
May I speak last, please? I'm still reviewing my notes. Thank you.
Okay. Joey Smith, you should be able to unmute your mic. And your 3 minutes start now. Joey, we can't hear you if you're speaking.
Okay, how's that?
We can hear you
That
now.
works.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Hello to President Linney, to the board, General Manager Chan, and everyone who just got those awards. Congratulations. My name is Joey Smith. I started my career with East Bay MUD in 1992. And I have had many, many experiences here. You don't stay somewhere this long and not grow. If you do, we're not doing something right. And East Bay MUD prides itself on doing things a better way. Through these years, I have had the opportunity to be in some leadership positions, and I've also learned how to be a good follower because of that. So when I speak up, generally it is not because I'm just speaking up for myself. I find it very, it's very uncomfortable to think that the district would put this much energy and effort into our diversity and inclusion master plan and our racial equity and justice task force and not acknowledge the new federal holiday of Juneteenth within 2021. It seems to be a slap in the face and an offense to everyone who has worked so diligently to ensure that East Bay MUD remains the respected entity that we are internationally. So again, I'm speaking up to urge our board and our general manager, our general counsel, whoever it is that needs to make it happen, because East Bay MUD is known for making things happen and being a leader. Let's continue to do that. I implore you. Thank you very much for your time. And just so you know, I would like to speak on number 18 when we get to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joey. Appreciate those comments.
Next, we have Yvette Rivera. Yvette, you should be able to unmute your mic. Your 3 minutes start now.
Thank you. Just want to start off by saying that I spoke at the 11 a.m. meeting this morning, and I talked about entering into the public record the civil rights complaint against East Bay MUD by Ariel Bland and Saji Pierce. I mentioned that the full details of the lawsuit can be accessed through East Bay MUD's Public Records Act request, or I could be emailed directly at eastbaymudgal@gmail.com. That civil rights lawsuit has 19 causes of action, which include, they're all civil rights causes of action: deprivation of rights, retaliation, violation of the EPA Act, failure to promote, failure to prevent a hostile work environment, wrongful termination. And again, all of the details can be reviewed at the, when I send anyone that makes the request, or when East Bay MUD provides California Public Records Act filing. I'm going to make a general statement right now, and it's I'm an East Bay MUD ratepayer, and this is basically to the whole board. I don't know how many millions of dollars of ratepayer money is going to be continued to be misused to defend ongoing civil rights lawsuits against East Bay MUD and its agents.
That's not
The
us.
expenditure of all of those funds reminds me of how the Catholic churches use parishioner funds to hire the best lawyers to protect their pedophiles. It's my opinion that East Bay MUD isn't any better when it uses ratepayer funds to protect its habitual misogynists, racists, and harassers. I know what my legacy is going to be. It's going to be the same as Ariel Bland and Saji Pierce's. We're women who stood up to this system of discrimination, racism, and retaliation at East Bay MUD. After my comments this morning, Director Linney chose to say that East Bay MUD is committed to diversity, inclusion, etc. To that I say, Director Linney, you come from a position of power and privilege, and you espouse the district's propaganda and do not fully grasp the racism, discrimination, and misogyny that people of color and women at East Bay MUD are subjected to. I will be speaking about all of these civil rights cases at future board meetings, just to make sure that there's transparency and that the public knows. Thank you.
So generally speaking, we don't comment or try to answer public comments during this period because they're not agendized. But I do feel compelled to be able to say that East Bay MUD takes all these kinds of allegations very seriously, and that we are committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and doing what we can to foster these values within the district's work environment. We've made a renewed commitment to that in this past year, and we will do so going forward. So, do we have any other comments?
We do. We have two additional people for public comment. George Cleveland, you should be able to unmute your mic, and your 3 minutes will start now.
Thank you, Risha. Good afternoon, President Linney, members of the Board of Directors, General Manager Chan, and those who are in attendance. I'm saying it again from what I said in the 11 a.m. meeting because I think there are some people in the room who didn't hear. It kind of ties into what the President Linney just said about diversity and inclusion, and also what Joey said about Juneteenth. You know, it was just added as a federal holiday this past week. And of course, it was impossible for us to celebrate it on or around the day itself because of the timing. And I put as a suggestion that for a number of reasons that this year and this year only, that it would be a fitting way to celebrate the new federal holiday a little bit late and have that holiday on July the 2nd, which is a Friday. I said that because I feel that there is a tie into the concept of independence, because, you know, the 4th of July, which celebrate on Monday, July 5th, and independence from tyranny of our oppressors in England, and independence for people who were enslaved after the Civil War, Emancipation Proclamation, and so forth. I think it also would be a good thing to be a positive thing for the workforce in terms of dealing with the pandemic, as we have done over the past 15 months. That I think it would be a wonderful way to say thank you for the hard work that everybody at East Bay MUD has put in during this time, and allow us to have a very nice long weekend around the 4th of July. I think from the standpoint of dealing with the customers, I'm not sure that that would be quite an impact on them, because at the same time last year on the 4th of July, we really weren't doing much of anything. And now that some of the restrictions have been lifted, we can move about more freely, literally. I think a lot of people will be preparing to have a nice long 4th of July weekend, and they won't be contacting East Bay MUD. So I think that it would be a really good thing on multiple fronts to have the holiday at that time as a fostering of diversity and inclusion. If we're going to talk the talk, we should walk the walk. And I think that would be an excellent time to do it. And again, it would be a benefit for those of us who work here, because, you know, we say thank you and we mean thank you, but sometimes you need something a little bit more tangible than the words thank you. And I think that this would be an appropriate way to do that for this year and this year only. And in the subsequent years, then celebrate the holiday on the day if it happens to fall during the week. And if it's on the weekend, you know, if it's on a Saturday, you have it on the Friday, and if it's on a Sunday, you have it on the following Monday. But for this year and this year only, let's do something good for everybody. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more speaker for public comment. Casey Evans, you should be able to unmute your mic.
Thank you very much. You're able to hear me?
Yes, and your 3 minutes will start now.
Thank you. I won't take the complete 3. I want to thank everyone for allowing me this time, members of the board and Jan and CEO. I just want to say that I do appreciate the sentiment from the board, but sometimes from the top, things can sometimes be a little skewed. So I did want to step up and stand up because it is the right thing to do. And although public speaking is not necessarily my favorite thing to do, I do want to thank Ms. Collier for coming forward and for speaking and for maybe, speaking towards what may be happening for those of us that are left behind. And so she is not completely off base and wrong, and just has somebody who believes in fair is fair. And I don't necessarily need any comments back. I just wanted to put it out there that sometimes the view from the top can be skewed, and as a current and long-term employee, Ms. Collier, I give you a bit of gratitude. Thank you, members of the board, for your time.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
There are no other speakers for public comment.
All right. We will now move on to the consent calendar. There are 14 items for consideration. I would like to pull item 14. Any other items?
5 and 10.
All right.
Second.
All right. So we have a motion by Director McIntosh, seconded by Marguerite, Director Young. Call for a vote on all those items. We don't have to do.
You know what, we're in person, and so we did roll call votes earlier, but you're in person, so
We're in person,
you can
so
do your
we don't
voice
need
vote.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries unanimously.
Isn't that wonderful music?
Yeah. Chorus of yays, ayes. On to item 5 then.
Yeah, thank you. I pulled item 5. I'm in complete support of the contract with the Civic Corps. My question is, the $600,000 for 1 year to do vegetation removal to reduce the fire hazard. How much did we spend last year in our budget for this? Is one question. 2, is it enough that we're in a drought that should vegetation control removal be almost year-round now?
Yeah, so we have the numbers pulled up, and Dave Briggs can respond to that. I will say this year, because of the rain patterns, there's actually less vegetation, so that part's a little easier this year, but Dave and Tony Montano is also here, can answer your question about how much we spent last year and whether we think this is enough for this year and how we're keeping up.
Yeah, I think in consultation with Tony earlier today, we feel confident we can get the job done this year with the resources that we have. And as Clifford was mentioning, with the lack of the spring rainfall, which causes all sorts of problems, but that keeps the weeds low. And so we should be able to get, last year the task was much larger because we got a rainfall in May and we had to hit everything twice. So this year the job should be slightly easier. We're confident we can get it done. And I think Tony might be able to give you the expenses on an annual basis.
Yeah, so we spend last year, we have budgets broken into 2. $500,000 that is the service area for facilities maintenance and construction, and the other $100,000 is for the aqueducts right away. They never spend all their money. We typically spend somewhere between $500,000 and $550,000 a year. And that is, after this year, we actually went into the 15% contingency to do that. Expected to do that probably again, but we typically try not to get through there. So $600,000 should be plenty for just weed abatement. But that's only the Civic Corps contract. That doesn't include goats. That doesn't include the other contracts that we have to manage fuel and trees.
Well, thank you for that information. Does Civic Corps have the ability, I know the California Conservation Corps does, I assume the Civic Corps does as well, to use chainsaws and other items that would do more than just weed abatement?
They're full, my understanding is they're full trail and weed clearing capable.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Tony and David. I mean, no, we've had some previous people who've come to the board via Zoom out of the Lomerend area, primarily talking about the fire hazard that exists. And I was just wondering, yes, we may have less grass vegetation this year, but we have a lot of dead brush and trees, and whether or not this is we don't want to necessarily be taken down when it's raining because of the hazards of mud and slipping with equipment. But is this the year to be doing more to reduce the overall fire hazard potential going into 2022 and beyond?
So Civic Corps does, do some, brush removal as well. Now, for the larger trees that we've talked about prior board meetings, the Monterey pines in particular,
right,
that's going to be through a separate contract, and we're working through to try to get a grant to assist us to get that done this year, but we're planning to do it regardless of whether we receive the grant or not. And that one's working through our Natural Resources Department outside of what Tony deals with. But as far as Civic Corps, not just the grasses, cutting the grasses and the handwork, but they do have mechanical equipment to remove some of the brush and smaller shrubs that are out there.
So I'll ask this and then hand it off to Marguerite, I guess. Do we have the flexibility if we see the need to do more to add to the contract, potentially if we need to do that?
Well, we can certainly amend a contract. I mean, that just means another board date.
Well, yeah, I understand. I just want to make sure that we are doing our utmost. I know that that is our intent, but with the current situation we're in.
And I do think that we have a 15% leeway without having to come back to the board. So if it's 15% over the dollar amount that we're awarding today, we do not need board authorization for that.
So it's like 75,000 more.
In the current contract, it's close to 90,000.
Okay.
So we have 4 Civic Court crews working. That's about 28 people. The cost for that is roughly somewhere around 60,000 a month.
Okay.
So that would give us a whole nother month and 4 more crews just in that 15%. So that's significant.
Thank you.
The thing that I was going to add from my sort of deep dive into this topic over the last couple of months is that this is just, as I think Clifford said, just one part of a very comprehensive fuels management program. I mean, the grant is $5 million. So, in comparison, just that part of it alone is, sort of puts it in some perspective. And in terms of the year-round piece of it, there are habitat restrictions that would really prevent us from doing much for about 5 months of the year anyway, because of nesting season in the watershed. So, I think we're bumping up against the maximum of what we can do, and I have certainly felt like we're are on top of it. And I think the residents who've come to our Zoom meetings and commented, who took the time to come out and take the tour and look at what we're doing, and we're on our Zoom meetings about this, have been similarly, I don't know, satisfied is the right word, because it's not a great situation, but understand our approach and respect and appreciate it much more than they did when they were just looking at 1,000 dead pine trees, which is hard to look at for sure.
They definitely have an appreciation of both our awareness and our approach. And maybe, Tony, you can also just provide some background and maybe reassure the board for your portion, how you're keeping up this year. I mean, my understanding is that you're doing well to hit all your deadlines to deal with vegetation management at the facilities.
We're trying our best. We start early. We start in March if we can, without the rains in this year. Obviously, we were able to do that. We get 4 crews as hard as we can out there. We mow what we can, and we bring the goats out, and we're competing against other companies that are doing the same thing. And the residents love the goats, especially in some areas, so that's a bonus. And so we're keeping on top of this, and we also have our website updated to let the public know, when we're going to be in their area. And we've been fairly responsive when people have called up with concerns, especially with the fire departments and those organizations, to ensure that they understand when we're going to come to their area.
Yeah, I am well aware that you guys are doing your utmost. Again, I was just looking at it going forward and the concerns.
No, I understand that, and overall, we're spending close to $2 million a year in fire fuel abatement, including everything put it together.
Thank you. I'll move this item.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, moved by Director Coleman, second by Director Patterson. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries unanimously.
Item 10, I pulled also, and it's more to make a comment. I support what we're doing in terms of conjunctive use in the contract with Woodward Kern for the East Base Plain Subbasin. As we're entering more and more into the realm of, we're in climate change, and we know that some years are going to be extremely dry, other years are going to be gully washers of primarily rain, not snow coming down. The opportunity exists, and I want us to, and I know it talks about it in the water management plan. Talks about conjunctive use, and specifically on page 313 of the document that we have online. I want to make sure that we have the ability to capture as much water that may be coming down in the rainfalls to capture and put in the groundwater basins. And if the study that Woodward Kern's going to be doing or others is sufficient to look at this long-term from a water supply need in terms of storage capability. Again, we're not going to be putting clearly storage on rivers. That's not going to happen. And to build a dam offstream is also very expensive. So really the best alternative when you get right down to it is conjunctive use. Where can we do it? Where can we store it? And how, when the water is flowing at a high velocity because of atmospheric rivers, what can we capture and how can we get it into the ground as soon as possible for future supply? And so that was, I'm in support of this, but it was a comment.
Thanks for the comment. And this contract is for the data management system. And as you noted in the Urban Water Management Plan, we discussed this, and we'll certainly provide an update early next year when we do the long-term water supply workshop again, and can cover this in more detail.
Okay, I'll move item 10.
Second?
Second.
All right, motion by
Me.
John. Director Coleman. I'm used to seeing the nameplates.
Hey, what's your name?
And seconded by Director McIntosh.
Did you bring your ID with
Any
you?
further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. All right, we're on to item 14, the appointment of general counsel. And before we do so, pursuant to section 54953, subsection C, subsection 3 of the Government Code, which I expect everyone has memorized, I am providing this oral report prior to taking action on the salary schedule, and compensation paid in the form of fringe benefits paid to the general counsel. It is recommended that upon appointment of the general counsel, he be paid a salary and fringe benefits detailed in the employment agreement with the general counsel, consisting of a base annual salary of $246,000 in the first year, and all other employment benefits provided district employees as the department at the department director level under district resolutions, policies, rules, regulations, and practices related to leave, retirement, insurance, and other benefits. This sounds like it was written by a lawyer. Is that possible?
Yeah, it was.
It is further recommended. It is further recommended that during the terms of the employment agreement, the board may authorize the same general salary increases and changes in fringe benefits to the general counsel that are granted to the district employees at the department director level. As such, it is recommended that the general counsel's current annual salary, as set forth in his employment agreement, be approved effective July 5th, 2021. That's all the official comments here. I would say that this is, of course, the item dealing with the appointment of general counsel, and I would like to move the motion to appoint
I would second it.
I don't have it in my speaking notes. Derek, to the general counsel.
And comment?
Oh, Frank, do you have a comment?
He always has a comment.
But I was pleased to see the president of the board for the change taking the lead on pulling this otherwise consent calendar item. Derek, this is really a privilege to see this advancement take place. You and I have worked together on a few things, and my earliest remembrance is the city of Hayward, and you and Andrew and I formulated a strategy, which then I left to both of your capable hands to do, and by golly, you delivered.
That's why we were sued.
That's right. And the only thing that remained untouched was something that neither Hayward or us wanted. But that one eventually came home, and it's gone now too. So, but really and truly, this is remarkable. I would not have forecast this those many years ago, but clearly the talent and capability is there. And so I want to congratulate you. And as we vote on this, it's going to be good to hear all these voices and see you in person as taking the role. But I also want to say one thing to Craig. Thank you for your years. Sure. You know, you've done a lot. And my fondest memory is when we took on one of the Seven Sisters, Shell Oil. And how all that went and how you shepherded that and guided us to where we are with them and the other sisters in the oil trades. And, you know, really and truly, I think we're passing a baton to a very capable person, but I want to express my appreciation to you for your time and service.
Thank you very much.
And I ran out of words.
Andy.
I will comment more about our appreciation dealing with working with Craig over the years at his retirement party, but we are so excited to bring Derek McDonald on board as our general counsel. We joined the district in the same year, and it was exciting to see an attorney who has really grown with the district become our general counsel. While we might say that you've been our litigation attorney over the years, you've really gotten so much exposure to the district in all of the departments that you work with. And I think it's we're very excited to have you step into this role. Thank you so much.
Oh, I would simply, Derek, just like to add, I've said this to you before, and Doug, in my conversation with you when we gave you the initial news, but you were supported unanimously by this board, and I think that's important for you to know going forward, that we're here to help you in this role, and if there's anything you need, just let us know. And we're very proud. And say more great things because his family is watching in Croatia. They came off the beach to watch.
Well, and that
Stretch this out about an hour's worth.
We can keep going.
in this case, to Derek's family. We're very proud to have Derek stepping into the shoes of Craig. I know that you're going to do a phenomenal job representing the district's interest, giving us the best advice that is available, and you have a great team to work with on the 9th floor, and we're really I'm looking forward to it. We're all looking forward to it. And to Craig, thank you for your many years of solid dedication to EBMUD. It's greatly appreciated.
Actually, you want to go for it?
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll be last.
I don't have, I'm really glad you stood up because I've been saying, where is Derek?
You're just stalling until he gets here.
Right behind the podium. I'm so glad to see you stepping into this role and, look forward to what you will bring to the district in this role. And like Lisa said, we were all it was clear to everybody, I think, that you were the best choice to take over from Craig, who we will, whose guidance we will miss. And again, he has a retirement party coming. That'll be an in-person retirement party, I'm assuming, which is exciting. So thank you and welcome. Not really welcome, but welcome to the new role.
Go ahead, Bill.
Derek, I just want you to know that a lot of your previous work, particularly in water law, was the reason why you were my choice from the beginning. And I wanted you to know that we appreciate your past contributions. We know you're going to build on those as you go forward, assembling and working with the team on the 9th floor in the best interest of the district. And I thank you, Craig, for your services and your bringing him around. We owe you something for that. So welcome. And since I'm the last one to speak, I want to move the item.
I think I already made that motion, but thank you, Bill.
Are you? You haven't spoken?
Well, I just, I mumbled a bunch of legal things before. Derek, I'll just add, again, want you to know you have the full confidence of the board for this job. No pressure, but I know we're confident that you're going to do a great job. And just, again, appreciation to Craig for all his years of service to the district and to the board, especially in the role of general counsel as well. So I think we need to take a vote here.
I move it.
Okay, so
Do you
we
want to
have
do
a
a roll
motion and
call?
a second.
Yeah, you want to do a roll call? Or
Yeah,
do you
let's
wanna...
do a roll call.
All right.
For old
Drag
time's
it out
sake.
even more,
For old
Derek.
time's sake, yeah.
Wait, we haven't heard him talk yet.
Did you want to make a comment before we take the vote? Yeah.
Oh, wait.
Yes.
You better
No,
wait
I
until
gotta
we
vote. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. So we had a motion by President Lenny, seconded by Director Mellon. Roll call vote. Director Coleman?
Yes.
Director Katz?
Yes.
Director McIntosh?
Yes.
Director Mellon?
Yes.
Director Patterson?
Yes.
Director Young?
You bet.
President Lenny?
Yes.
Well, thank you, President Linney and members of the board. Thank you very much for your kind words. I am both honored and humbled by your appointment and your faith in me, and I plan to work very hard to live up to that faith. As you know, together we're going to be facing some challenges and some opportunities in a post-pandemic world that's getting hotter and drier, and I'd be less than truthful if I said that I was not a bit nervous being here before you today and stepping into that new role. But I'd be far more nervous if I didn't know that I had your support and the support of General Manager Chan, and also the support of a very hardworking, dedicated staff in the Office of General Counsel and some of the best attorneys in the state of California that work in our office. We are motivated every day by you and by 2,000 East BayMUD employees that really strive to promote the values and the mission of the district and really make the district an example of a national example of leadership, government service, and environmental stewardship. And so we're always proud to serve. And so I look forward stepping into my new role and drinking from the fire hose, as it's been described to me on more than one occasion. Thank you, Clifford and Craig. And finally, Craig, just really wanted to thank you. That's why I'm a little verklempt. Just thank you. Your mentorship and your friendship over the last 14 years have meant a lot to me, more than I can put in words before I completely lose it and embarrass myself. So with that, I will step down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Craig, you almost made him cry.
All right, we will will now move on to determination and discussion. Item 15 is approving the proposed financing plan for fiscal year 2022.
These next three items were discussed at this morning's Finance Administration Committee meeting. The committee unanimously recommended each of these items for the board. And so first we have Robbie Haney, our Treasury Manager, who will present the proposed fiscal year 2022 financing plan.
Looks like he's on the screen.
Okay. Sounds like you can see me and hear me. Good afternoon, President Linney and members of the board. I am Robbie Haney, the Treasury Manager at the district, and I'll be briefly going over the financing plan for fiscal year 2022. Next slide, please. Thank you. Here's a brief agenda. I'll give an overview of the debt we have outstanding now. We'll then review our financing accomplishments for this fiscal year, and then go over the proposed financing plan for the coming fiscal year 2022. Next slide, please. So here's an overview of the district's debt outstanding today. The water system has $2.7 billion in debt. Most of that is regular fixed rate revenue bonds. A smaller portion, about 12%, is variable rate commercial paper. And then 4% is synthetically fixed rate debt. That's the swaps that we talked about. And 1% represents state loans. For the wastewater system, there is $357 million in debt outstanding. That is almost all fixed rate debt, except for 3% that is variable rate extendable commercial paper. The bond ratings are here for both systems, and they're very high. AAA from S&P, that's the highest rating there. AA plus from Fitch, and AA1, which is basically like AA plus from Moody's. Okay, next slide, please. So here's an overview of the financing activities for the fiscal year just ending now or ending next week. In April, we paid off a small state loan early in order to save on interest and free up a reserve fund. Also in April, the board authorized our commercial paper program, and that allowed it to continue. That's something required under the MUD Act every 7 years. And then in May, we paid down $700,000 in wastewater commercial paper using funds from lower than budgeted interest for the year. And then earlier this month, we paid down $23 million in water system commercial paper. The sources of funding for that were, again, lower interest rates than we had budgeted and a delayed need for a new bond issue this year. And then finally, at the bottom of this list, today we're seeking approval, that's the next two items after this, for the extension of 2 liquidity agreements. Those support our variable rate debt. And actually, in this case, extending them saves the district a little bit of money. So there'll be more on that in the next 2 items. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. So the previous slide covered what we did last year. Here is what we're planning to do this coming year. We're budgeting to continue paying down commercial paper principal. We plan to pay down $10 million in water CP and $1 million in wastewater CP. And then under our budget, we're planning to issue new money bonds this coming fiscal year. This is something we have not done since 2019, so it's been a little while. Currently, we're planning to issue $150 million for the water system and $10 million for the wastewater system. And of course, for any bond issue, we will be bringing it to the board for approval before we would actually do the issuance. And then we continue moving forward on the WIFIA loan. We're tentatively targeting closing that loan in the winter. And then this is something we've been anticipating for a few years now, and we're excited about. We have bonds we issued in 2012, which are callable this coming year. Because they're callable, we expect to be able to refund those with new bonds for some pretty significant interest savings, issuing new bonds at lower rates than what those bonds are at. So hopefully we'll be doing that refunding this next year. And then finally, as always, we're going to continue to monitor market conditions for refunding opportunities like the one I just mentioned, and any de-risking opportunities, which would mostly be related to our swaps, which is already a smaller part of our portfolio than it used to be. Okay, next slide, please. So we're here today to seek approval, board approval, for this financing plan. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, Frank.
The spring 2022, the issue new money revenue bonds. At what interest rate are you anticipating, Robbie?
Ooh, that's a good question. I won't go on record predicting interest rates because it's impossible. And I almost want to just leave it at that. We don't know. Interest rates are low right now. They've really long-term rates, which is what we'd be issuing under, because these would be 30-year bonds, have really been low for a while now. Lots of things going on that you read in the news, and so we, in many ways, what we say here, and this is the right thing to do, we don't time our issuances based on interest rates. We do it based on the capital needs, and so I guess I gave a non-answer. I'm not sure where rates will be.
I think you said it at the beginning. You don't know. So
yeah. Okay, good.
I can accept that. I was just hoping for a nice wild guess.
Okay, yeah.
But that's okay.
I know too much. I know too much to know that I shouldn't guess. So.
Thanks for taking a shot at answering.
Okay.
Any other questions? Comments? Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Second.
Director Patterson moves. Director Katz seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously.
So, thank you, Robbie.
Thank you, Robbie.
Sand Feldman Crow will present the next two items. The first is to discuss extending our revolving credit agreement for commercial paper notes with Bank of America.
Hi, good afternoon, directors. As Clifford mentioned, I'm Sam Feldman Crow. I'm the district's debt administrator, and I'm here to talk about two items related to debt that Robbie mentioned in the financing presentation. So this first one is for the revolving credit agreement for our commercial paper notes, specifically the water series, sub-series A2. Next slide, please. So the water commercial paper program is a form of short-term indebtedness or short-term debt. In a commercial paper program like this, this one for the district's water system, individual notes or pieces of debt are sold for an average of 90 days. We have what are called dealers. These are banks that each time a note is going to mature on a single day, they take the principal of that note and they sell it again to investors for up to 270 days in the future. But again, it's an average length of 90 days. So then, you know, when you reach that, let's say it's 90 days, it then rolls again and is sold again as a new commercial paper note. So as part of this program, the district is required to have backup liquidity or some kind of liquidity agreement in case a dealer is ever unable to sell a new commercial paper note on a day when a note is due to be paid. So if you reach the end of those 90 days on one note and for some reason there's a market disruption or something else, then we have these agreements that you see listed there that would step in and buy the notes. And so for that is really the purpose of these liquidity agreements. So in that table you see we have two sub-series, and as of June 4th, after the district paid off some of its commercial paper, it totals about $313 million. So the A2 series highlighted there in orange is with Bank of America, or BANA, and that one is expiring in November 2021. So next slide, please. So in April, the district began the process of preparing for that expiration. We always start this early so we can make sure we have enough time to achieve the most cost-effective agreement. Our first step in that process is reaching out to the current provider and asking them for the terms of their extension. If are they willing to extend the agreement, and if so, at what price and for what term? And the reason we start with an extension is that extending the current agreement is less expensive than substituting a new agreement. This is because an extension, both extensions and substitutions require us to pay some upfront fees and costs for external attorneys and other advisors, and also rating agency fees. And because an extension is only modifying the existing agreement, it's much quicker and therefore much less expensive to extend it than it would be to start from scratch. So in this case, we negotiated some with the bank, and we got the final proposal for an extension, and it was 29 basis points, or 0.29% for annually for a term of 3 years. So for reference, our current fee from Bank of America under the existing agreement is 30 basis points, or 0.3%. So it's 1 basis point lower, and that creates savings of about $14,000 per year. Just to note, one reason we value our very strong credit ratings that Ravi mentioned is that if our credit rating was to fall, it would incrementally increase the cost of this agreement, as well as other liquidity agreements. So even though this is slightly less expensive and therefore we thought it was a pretty good proposal, we also asked our municipal advisor to check, they have a sheet of comparisons of other agreements from other high-rated utility entities or state agencies that have similar kinds of agreements. And when you do that comparison, this is some of the best rates, or it is the best rate folks, other agencies like us have received. I think there's actually one that beats it, and it's one of ours from several years ago. But it is still a very competitive rate. And so that's one way we know that this extension is a good offer. And then we also had them do an analysis to say, if you paid these higher upfront costs to do a full substitution, what would the exchange need to be on the cost of the agreement, the basis points of it, in order for the substitution to be less expensive overall? And that leads us to see that it would take a offer of 26 basis points, which is unlikely to be offered. We haven't really seen that in the market these days. So, and we don't think that's likely at all. And so then on to the next slide. Those are the reasons that today we are bringing a recommendation to the board to authorize execution of legal documents associated with extending the revolving credit agreement with Bank of America. And I can take your questions.
Questions? That motion?
I'll move the item.
Second.
All right, moved by Director Coleman, seconded by Director Patterson. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Carries unanimously.
Thank you. So for
Thank you, Sam.
For the next item, Sam's also going to discuss an agreement to extend our standby bond purchase agreement with U.S. Bank.
Thank you so much. I'm back. Second item for liquidity agreements. So this one we're talking about our portion of our long-term debts, the standby bond purchase agreement for the water revenue bonds 2008-2 and 2008-3. This is on that chart we showed you earlier in the financing plan, talked about synthetically fixed rate debt. This is that portion of debt. So on to the next slide. And I'll talk about them a little bit more. So the Water System Series 2008A bonds, they're what are known as variable rate demand bonds, or VRDBs. It's a form of long-term debt, unlike the water commercial paper item we just talked about. But this is a variable rate debt. VRDBs are a type of variable rate bond that's remarketed weekly. So the interest rate changes every week when a remarketing agent places the bonds at the lowest cost available in the market. So at some times, including right now, it's extremely low cost every week, about 0.02% per week of interest. And one of the features of these variable rate demand bonds, because they're remarketed weekly, is that the district has to have a standby bond purchase agreement, an SBPA, that provided by a well-rated provider that would step in and purchase the bonds if the remarketing agent was ever unable to sell the bonds in a given week. So that is the function of this liquidity agreement, is again to step in case there is something like a market disruption. You'll note that in the table there are 4 subseries of 2008A bonds totaling $105.3 million, just about. And 2 of those highlighted in orange are the A2, A3 subseries, and those are supported by the same standby bond purchase agreement provided by U.S. Bank, and those also expire this November. So next slide, please. So you'll see a very similar slide to what I just talked about on the last item, so I won't explain everything again, but in the same way we started this process at the same time we started the other one and went through the same steps. So first reach out to the current provider, which in this case was U.S. Bank. Substitution, again, is more expensive than extension, and so we prefer extending with the current provider if possible, and for all the same reasons. It is more time and external work which is charged to us in order to substitute a new agreement versus extend. And And so through some negotiation, eventually what we got back was a 30 basis point offer for 3.5 years. So on the last item, I talked about a 29 basis point offer for 3 years. This is a 6 months longer and 1 basis point higher. In the end, we thought that was advantageous to the district because it helps us stagger the terms of these expirations. Because if we came up to that November extension this year, for example, and there was something going on in the market and we had 2 agreements expiring at the same time, it just adds a little bit of risk to have those expiring at the same time. So in this case, we preferred to stagger the expiration date of these 2 agreements by 6 months. And this is still less expensive than our existing, or it is a lower cost to the district than our existing agreement with US Bank, which is 32 basis points or 0.32%. So there is a small savings of about $10,000 per year under this new agreement. And for the same reasons I talked about, very strong credit ratings help the district under this agreement because it keeps the cost and the fees low. They increase incrementally as if the district's credit ratings were to fall. And we did some of that same analysis. Is this a reasonable offer, and what would the offer have to be in order for a substitution with those higher upfront costs? What would that offer have to look like for it to be less expensive overall to go with the substitution? And in this case, it would be 24 basis points, which is not ever seen in what we know. So very unlikely to get there. And so on the next slide, you'll see that our recommendation today is authorize execution of the legal documents for this, the standby bond purchase agreement, extending that with US Bank. And I can take your questions.
Any questions?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Director McIntosh, seconded by Director Patterson. I just had one question on these types of things. Are they competitive? Do we go out for bid, or is this a company that US Bank? Is it a negotiation? How does it actually work?
Great question. So we can negotiate. Well, in this case, what we did was the extension first, and we had some back and forth. There were different offers at first that we countered, and I'll be frank that it was valuable to us that these 2 were happening at the same time, because we were having these conversations and saying, well, what we heard over here is this. Can you do that? And so there is a little bit of negotiation that goes into extending. And if the offers we got in the end, we thought we could get better offers out in the market, we could have done a request for proposal or some other procurement. But in the end, in this case, we thought there isn't a way for us to get a better offer. And it isn't worth the additional cost to us of going through that process. One of the ones we're talking about here is on its second. This is the second amendment. So the last time we did it was a new agreement, and then the other is on its third amendment. So this is the second time we've extended it. All of these started as requests for proposals, though.
All right.
I hope that answers. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's helpful. And I can't help letting this pass. I know this is just for US Bank this time, but even just seeing the name Wells Fargo on here, I can't help but comment that anything we can do to ever not give business to Wells Fargo, given their past record of misrepresentation and of work that they've done for account holders. I think we should just keep that in mind. But anyway, with that, we'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? It passes. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Sam. For the next item, Risha, I know Joey had wanted to make a comment. Do you know if she wants to make it before or after the item is presented?
So I don't, oh, there she is. Joey, you should be able to unmute your mic. Did you want to speak before or after the presentation?
I can speak after the presentation. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. So this month is Pride Month, where we recognize and celebrate the contributions of LGBTQIA plus individuals. However, we should remember that the June celebration is a commemoration of the Stonewall riots in New York City back in 1969. For the next item, we're asking the board to consider adopting a resolution condemning and combating discrimination, intolerance, and violence against the LGBTQIA plus community. This draft resolution was discussed at the Legislative HR Committee meeting on June 8th. Max Pfeffer, Assistant Engineer, will make the presentation, and before he presents, I do want to acknowledge Eileen White, who has been the Senior Management Team sponsor for the Reigning Pride Affinity Group and been very supportive of this effort. With that, Max, are you ready to make your presentation?
Yes, let's go. Okay, good afternoon, members of the board, President Linney and staff. It is my pleasure today to represent on behalf of Reigning Pride. Like Clifford mentioned, my name is Max Pfeffer. I'm the Vice President of the Reigning Pride Committee. And it's my pleasure today to bring forth the resolution condemning and combating discrimination, intolerance, and violence against the LGBTQIA plus community. Next slide, please. So for the benefit of the public and the board, we want to start with some terminology. On the last slide, I used LGBTQIA+. So we want to define that for everyone. L, we're referring to lesbian, G, gay, B, bisexual, T, transgender, queer, Q, queer and or questioning, I, intersex, A, asexual, and the plus in our acronym represents all the other gender and sexual identities that aren't represented by the other parts of the acronym. And for us, it's incredibly important that in the spirit of inclusion, we want to make sure we are representing everyone as part of this acronym. Next slide, please. So we wanted to present some numbers by the numbers on what does the LGBTQIA population look like over time. So you can see in our chart, based off of a Gallup poll in 2020, they asked members of the US population if they identify as LGBTQIA+, and you can see there's a somewhat exponential increase going from the baby boomer generation all the way through Gen Z, which is the newest generation starting to enter the EBMUD workforce. So the takeaway here is the population that identifies as LGBTQIA+ is increasing with every generation. And if we want to remain an employer of choice here in the Bay Area and in the nation, we need to make sure we're listening to and acknowledging this important demographic that's been marginalized. Next slide, please.
Max, could I ask you on that one? Is there?
Yeah, go ahead.
Again, a matter of self-education, the reasoning for an understanding of why it's increasing? Is it
I think it's
awareness, education? Is it better understanding?
Sure. Yeah, I can offer my guess. This is just based off my own experience. I think one thing is comfort in identifying in a poll. That's certainly one aspect that we know that there's more people that will identify in a poll if they identify as LGBTQIA+. So that's one angle. But I think overall in the population in general, we've made so much progress over the past 20 years. I think people are just in general more uncomfortable just being that and being that out in the public as well. So I think it's an increase in willing to be out, but also an actual increase in the population as well, just as it's become more normalized.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. So at the district, we do have our own LGBTQIA plus community that I represent on behalf of Reigning Pride. So you see there, to represent this community at East Bay Mud, the Reigning Pride Affinity Group was formed in 2014. And since 2014, we've done a variety of activities. As you walked into the boardroom today, you probably noticed our decorations in the lobby of our rainbow waterfall and having the Pride flags hang up in the administration building lobby. So Pride Month is a big deal for our committee. We host quite a few events over the past couple of years. But I do want to point out this past year in 2020 and 2021, our committee's been much more focused on activism within our organization. So we've been coordinating with the Racial Equity and Justice Project. We've been coordinating with the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Strategic Plan. So as we're moving into the future, we're focused more on policy and how we can make East Bay Mud an even better workplace. And on the photo on the right, you'll see that's a photo from our Oakland Pride festival that we had here in Oakland, where an EBMUD contingent was part of the parade. Next slide, please. So injustices against the LGBTQIA plus community. Why are we specifically calling out this community as a marginalized group? So first, I'll start with the forms of discrimination, and then I'll mention the locations of discrimination. Over time, the LGBTQ community has been discriminated in the following ways: denial of entry to places, unequal treatment, harassment, violence, and blocking from access to public services. And those locations of that discrimination has occurred in a myriad of places. It could be restaurants, senior centers, grocery stores, entertainment facilities, healthcare facilities, shelters, government offices, and other public services, youth service providers, transportation, and bathrooms. There's been a wide range of how the LGBTQIA plus community has experienced discrimination. And it's important to acknowledge those as a district, since we are an employer, and what we can do to make it a safer space for our employees. Next slide, please. So one way those injustices are memorialized and here in the United States is actually through discriminatory legislation. So this figure we're showing here, it shows a map of the United States, and the colors you're seeing here represent how many bills have been introduced in the 2021 legislative session that are discriminatory to the LGBTQIA plus population. And to just give you some numbers, in the 2021 legislative session, over 250 bills have been introduced nationwide in state legislatures that aim to discriminate against the LGBT population. And I specifically want to mention 2 bills that have been introduced and enacted into law and signed by each state's governor. The first bill I want to mention is Montana House Bill 112, which would require interscholastic athletes to participate under sex assigned at birth. So this particularly discriminates against transgender people. The second bill is Tennessee House Bill 1182, which would require businesses and government facilities open to the public to post a sign if they allow transgender people to use multi-person facilities associated with their gender identity. And to add on to that, it was recently announced a few weeks ago that the state could tack on a Class B misdemeanor if owners do not comply with this policy, and they could face a fine and up to 6 months in jail time. So the takeaway message here is 2021 has been a record year for anti-LGBT and specifically anti-transgender legislation across the country. That record was previously broken in 2020, so just last year. So we're seeing an unprecedented amount of legislation going through the state houses. And one thing I do want to add here as well, 2021 has also been a record year for reported fatal shootings and violent deaths of transgender people. A majority of these deaths have been to Black and Latinx women. So one thing in particular, as we're advocating and discussing LGBTQIA plus community, it's very important to me and our committee that we are focusing on the most marginalized parts of our community, and that is specifically our transgender people and our people of color. Next slide, please. So here we are at our resolution. So the district staff, the unions, everyone has had their opportunity to comment on this resolution, and it's been a great effort upon staff. And I do want to call out our senior management sponsor, Eileen White, for really getting this all together and coordinating it for all of us. So I'll just read this out for everyone. Be it resolved that the district condemns all manifestations and expressions of gender and sexual orientation discrimination, intolerance, and violence against LGBTQIA plus people, and specifically transgender people. Next slide, please. So this resolution commits to 4 specific actions at the end after all of the recitals which you saw in your board packet. The first of which I'll talk about is listening. So I'll read directly from the resolution here. Listen to the concerns of the LGBTQIA plus community and employees to promote a sense of safety and belonging and recognition that the district is a diverse community that stands united as Americans. The second is support. Support the LGBTQIA plus community by enacting district actions that reaffirm the district's dedication to treating LGBTQIA plus employees with dignity, respect, and equity. Third is encourage. Encourage all district employees to develop cultural competence of LGBTQIA plus issues, such as an understanding of the broad range of gender expressions, gender identities, and sexual orientations for the purpose of fostering intercultural unity and emphasizing the intersectionality of all people. Fourth is include. Include initiatives in the district's diversity, equity, and inclusion strategic plan to support LGBTQIA+ employees. Next slide, please. So what are our next steps? We have this resolution, and we've split this up into two different categories. We have what the district can do and what Reigning Pride, our affinity group, will advocate for through our district activities. So the first is for you as members of the board to consider this resolution and consider adopting it to support our employees. The second is the district hosted focus groups, and we'd like the district to host trainings on LGBTQIA+ issues going forward. So these focus groups and training are specifically focused for the diversity, equity, and inclusion strategic plan. On the other side, for Reigning Pride initiatives, these are issues that are important to our affinity group, and we will be coordinating with the district to figure out what is the right policy for each of these areas. The first is for gender neutral bathrooms. So having some access to district facilities that are gender neutral. And the second is having gender inclusive updates to our information and technology systems. So we will be working with the district to figure out what these policies look like going forward. And next slide.
Max, again, I'm
Go ahead.
back one on the last slide. Gender inclusive updates to IT systems. Could you give me a sense of what that is? That's not something I'm familiar with.
Sure, yeah. So in our current HR system, you're only allowed to identify as male or female. It's only one of two options. So that's one particular example with the new HRIS replacement project, that the new system will be more inclusive.
And then Max, on that same vein, does that, are we also looking at, is it a district action or a Reigning Pride initiative to look at our policies and procedures, things like the trail permits, other, sort of customer facing, systems, et cetera, that we have in the same way?
Sure, can I hand that off to Clifford so we get the right answer on that one?
Or Eileen?
Well,
It's like
yeah,
a ready to answer.
Yeah, I'm sure Eileen can respond to some of it, but you've probably seen some of the actions we've already been taking. When we approved the budget, we've gone through our regulations governing water service and going through all of our regulations. We've already made modifications to the trail permits. So we've been going through our systems with an eye for that and to make those types of corrections. Eileen, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I was just going to say, and the Reigning Pride Affinity Group's been giving input to the Winners Group and working with Dairy, so it's a real team effort. And I do want to mention Max did an incredible job working on helping draft the resolution, and it was done by the unions, and there was representatives from all the unions and various groups in the district. And the one last thing I did want to you will be seeing emails on September 11th and 12th is Oakland Pride weekend, and we're going to wait and see, what's happening with COVID, but we're hoping to have a good turnout there, and I did just want to mention that.
Great. I just want to say that, when I joined the district was when I think the Reigning Pride committee was formed in the first, year of activity, and I'm just very proud of the work that the committee has done and the evolution that the committee has taken to really now becoming, sort of part of, building an inclusive culture in our organization. And I do hope that we have an in-person Pride celebration in Oakland, and that EBMUD's contingent is up there with, anybody who hasn't been, we're sort of the very little people in the contingent, and I'd love to see, 50, 60, 100, if, COVID safe social distancing, and I would love to be the maker of the motion to support this resolution.
I would like to second.
All right.
I think we have speakers too.
Oh, that's right. We have a speaker. Thank you for that.
We have two people for public comment.
Okay. Let's go ahead with that.
So, Joey, you should be able to unmute your mic, and your 3 minutes will start now. We can't hear you just yet. Joey?
Okay, there we go.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Madam Secretary. Again, good afternoon to President Linney, to the board, and to General Manager Chan. My name is Joey Smith, and I do a lot inside and outside of East Bay MUD. A lot of people pay attention to us. I get a lot of questions, and the fact that we raised the flag last year brought a lot of attention to us. And I got a few handshakes and high fives and things like that, all virtual, of course. But that inspired other organizations, people that I know at other places, to raise the flag this year. So thank you for moving on that and being a leader in that. Please do pass this resolution that Max has presented. A lot of work has gone on it. It is timely, it is important, and this is another way that East Bay MUD can show its true leadership in our industry and in our communities. Congratulations on the good works we've done. May we improve where we need to, and may we be understanding in our process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joey.
Next, we have George Cleveland. You should be able to unmute your mic, and your 3 minutes will start now.
Thank you, Risha. I hadn't seen the presentation ahead of time, so I was a little surprised to see myself in the middle of it in that open pride continuum, but that's okay. I was glad that to be able to represent us in that festivities, and hopefully we'll do so again this year, COVID willing. I was on the Reigning Pride Committee when it first started, and just from a district standpoint, the movement that we have made in the 7 years, to me, is remarkable. I couldn't have imagined when we started that I would be able to come to work last year and this year, because I'm in the office once a week, and to walk in front of the building and see that beautiful pride flag on our flagpole. It's very moving to me. It's very intense. It makes me feel accepted for who I am. And I think it makes other people who are part of the LGBTQIA plus community feel that they are accepted at East Bay MUD, because we've moved and we have this resolution. Because when we started, it was a battle. We had to battle just to have our little pride jug by the elevator so people could donate to our cause if they wanted to. And the fact that we are moving and becoming activists over this time and getting the support that we have. And I will reiterate what other people have said about our senior management team sponsor, Eileen White. We are blessed to have her on our side. She is such a force of good for us. It's just, if you don't know, now you know, because it's just wonderful. And I can't believe that this is happening. It's just, I know there are lots of steps still to take. Max demonstrated that in the report. There are some segments of our country who are behind the times and on the wrong side of history. But I know that we have the good side here at East Bay MUD. And I know that we have the support. And I know that it's evolved, because you know that I send out the trivia questions every week. And if you, this is the last week, and if you haven't had a chance to answer it, try it, please. But when I used to send those out, I would get comments from people say, I don't want you to email this to me, please stop. We don't have that anymore. People have evolved. And that's a great thing. And I hope it continues on this positive track, because it really does speak volumes to the content and character of this organization when they are able to treat us, who have been consistently marginalized because of who we are, and to make us feel welcome and wanted. And that's brilliant. And I'm very thankful for that. And that's all I have to say.
Well, that's a lot to say. Thank you, George. Any other comments, questions from board members? Go ahead, Eddie.
I would like to thank the Reigning Pride Committee for bringing this resolution to us, and especially being a partner with the district as we move forward on our racial justice and equity project, bringing forward the experiences of LGBTQIA plus community members, especially the experiences of intersectional identities that experience discrimination and harassment in possibly at workplaces and possibly in the community, to understand how does East Bay MUD become a model employer, one where we do not have discrimination or harassment, and we have one where all people are included and provided that support. It's so important to have an affinity group like Reigning Pride provide that center of support and enthusiasm, especially around Pride Month, but year-round to be able to create that focal point for a voice at work, to be able to help the district be a better employer and an inclusive employer for all employees, especially those who come with pride in the community. Thank you so much for bringing this, and I'm enthusiastic for your contribution to this resolution, as well as our ongoing efforts to make sure that we continue to self-examine how we can be an inclusive and supportive employer.
Great, thank you. John?
I'll just be real quick. At the Ledge Committee, as Max indicated, we approved this last month, and Max did a great job in presenting to the committee, and I'd like to also applaud Eileen White for her leadership that she provided to the committee from the senior management team, and it was a unanimous vote in support bringing it forward to today.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to also echo Andy's perspective. He used the term partner. I also use the term guide. Nice to have both a partner and a guide to help us sort this out and figure this out, and provide leadership, as we've heard from other folks, to other employers, and to navigate this. So I appreciate all that. Any other comments? All right, well, with that, we have a motion and a second. For this resolution, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you, Max, and thank you for the Reigning Pride Committee.
Thank you, directors.
Thank you, Max. Thank you, Eileen. Thank you to Reigning Pride, and thank you, board. This means a lot to our employees and the organization. Next is the adoption of the Urban Water Management Plan and the Water Shortage Contingency Plan. We did discuss the draft plan with the Planning Committee back in November of 2020, and then with the full board on May 11th. We also discussed changes to the Drought Management Program guidelines with the full board on April 13th and April 27th. And we have Lena Tam, the Manager of Water Resources Planning, to make a presentation.
Thank you, Clifford, and good afternoon, President Linney and board members. The presentation on the district's urban water management plan and water shortage contingency plan is before you for adoption today. Both plans serve as the legal and technical foundation that integrates the land use planning of the cities and the counties that we serve with our own water supply planning, in addition to adaptively managing to climate change and emerging regulations. Next slide, please. Every 5 years, the plan is updated, and we provide an opportunity for the public to comment on our long-term water supply planning. The plan enables the district to meet specific regulatory requirements by reporting on the progress of complying with the Water Conservation Act of 2009, essentially the 20% reduction by 2020. The current drought has certainly highlighted the uncertainty that's inherent in long-term water supply planning, and we evaluated as staff a variety of scenarios that include high water demand, an extreme drought, and varying levels of CVP water supply allocation. We also need to have a certified urban water management plan to be eligible for state and grant funding, and the cities and the counties in our service area rely on the urban plan to determine whether there's adequate water supplies for new development projects. Next slide, please. So the comment period was opened from April 7th to May 12th. We held a public meeting on April the 29th. The board conducted a public hearing on May the 11th, and it's before you today for consideration for adoption. Next slide, please. During the comment period, we received 9 comments from the general public, West County Wastewater, the City of San Leandro, and the California Sport Fishing Alliance. Next slide, please. The first comment from the public asked the district to consider increasing storage in the wet years and even suggested building aqueducts to neighboring states where there are plenty of water and snowfall. We responded that the district is investing in groundwater banking projects that help make water available during dry years by storing it in underground aquifers, and that considering aqueduct construction from another state is not a viable alternative at this time, especially when compared to more promising future sources of supply, such as water conservation and recycled water and regional water projects. The second comment asked about the district's plans to reduce reservoir evaporation. We responded that the evaporation is minimized in all of our distribution reservoirs where there is a roof covering, and that our raw water reservoirs like Pardee and Comanche have a very large surface area that do not at this time make it technically viable to reduce reservoir evaporation. The third comment suggested that East Bay MUD should follow up more aggressively with customers who receive water conservation rebates and urged us to push the program more heavily. We responded that the district provides our customers with access to historical and current water consumption, interactive tools to evaluate and understand water use patterns, and we customize water use recommendations based on each property's unique characteristics through the My Water Report portal that's online. And the West County Wastewater asked that we clarify the availability of recycled water that was due to some interruptions with the maintenance and construction at the North Richmond Water Reclamation Plant, and we did that. Next slide, please. The City of San Leandro asked that we clarify our standard pressure range within certain pressure zones, and we did that. They asked that we address the cascading impacts if we had like multiple disasters from a drought, wildfire, PSPS event, and a pandemic. So we explained that we mitigate this cascading effect through response actions that would reduce our community's exposure to various hazards in our emergency operations plan and the district's local hazard mitigation plan. And these are all discussed in detail in Chapter 2 of the urban plan. They also asked us to update the urban plan to include additional details on resources that would be available during a PSPS event. Next slide, please. The California Sport Fishing Alliance, or CSPA, had asked us to establish a policy that would prevent customer demands from ever increasing. We responded that demand is driven by several factors that are outside of East Bay MUD's control, including land development, changes in land use over time, and climate effects. However, we do minimize increases in water demand through a very robust water conservation and water recycling program. Both are key components of our water supply portfolio. While we can't prevent future increases in demands due to climate change, we do analyze the impacts of climate change on our water supply and adaptively manage accordingly. And our demand study has also shown that water recycling and our conservation programs are expected to substantially reduce forecasted increases in demand. CSPA also asked the district to expand our recycled water and our groundwater projects, as Director Coleman had mentioned earlier. We described our active pursuit of groundwater conjunctive use projects in San Joaquin County, and although these projects have had some challenges with delays and institutional barriers, we continue to seek collaborations to test the viability of this project. All these comments.
Could I interrupt? Just going back to the previous point that the sports fishing, establishing a district policy to keep water demand from increasing. Kind of an interesting comment. And I know the answer was that basically, all of our policies are intended to keep water demand from increasing. But is there a district policy that says that, or does someone have to kind of see all the, our programs to see that that's, a major goal of the district?
I think it's captured somewhat in the district's latest 2050 demand study, where we did demonstrate that we have a strong record of conservation and recycling, where our demand has actually not grown to the levels that we had expected. So it manifests itself in our actual planning, but there's no explicit policy that says we're trying to use water to control demand.
So, I mean, I would just say, I think that's an interesting idea. Policies are policies, they only go as far as they get implemented, but to have a district-wide policy that says, hey, one of our goals here is to continue to decrease our water demand, is not a bad thing, not something that we would have to be, or just kind of roll over. I don't know. Yeah, John.
Well, I agree with what you're saying, Doug, and the comment from the fisheries, but on figure F4-1 on page 318 of our document, not of the book, but online, it shows that we were hitting about 210 million gallons a day in 1976. In 2020, we're down to about 120 million gallons a day, which is a significant decrease over a period of time while the population has gone up. And again, I'm looking at figure F-1 on page 318. So we have reduced it.
Yeah, I mean, you can say, well, we don't need a policy because we're already doing it. But on the other hand, you can say, well, we're doing it, and maybe we should have an explicit policy for that. I don't know. I mean, I don't need to pursue it too much, but I just find it, not something we have to be defensive about, but it seems like still an interesting idea.
A fact and an aspiration.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead, Lena.
Okay. Well, I appreciate those comments.
I cite it all the time.
Next slide, please. So in our discussions also with CSPA, they were especially complimentary of the district fishery management program. And the state resources agencies are recognizing that we have managed temperature conditions that promote the survivability of steelhead and Chinook salmon. This year, because of temperature issues on the American River, that's expected to reach like 22 degrees. The California Department of Fish and Wildlife had asked us if we can provide refuge to accommodate 500,000 fingerling steelheads at the McKelmy Fish Hatchery, where the temperatures are expected to be less than 17 degrees. And by relying or moving supplemental supplies into our system, our operators can maintain the cold water layer at Pardee and Comanche to create those conducive conditions for the fisheries. Next slide, please.
Lena, I have a question. I mean, this is great. It shows that the state understands that we're doing the right job. I'm just curious, when the salmon, if they're being released out of the McCullamy hatchery that are being brought down from the American River, how are they being tagged as being American River salmon or McCullamy? Because often they go back to their source of where they are released from. So does that mean we're going to have a huge spike in the number of salmon returns?
I think, Lena, Mike is up here. He can respond to that question.
Okay, we do tag them, but go ahead.
Director Coleman, yes, as for the steelhead that are coming from the American River, they are being marked separately, so they're having an extra fin clip, so we'll be able to identify the difference between the American River steelhead and our McKelmy steelhead.
So, thank you. Are we going to see an increase, though, in returns as a result of their being released out of our hatchery down the McCullamy into the delta of the ocean and then coming back in fall?
So actually the plan is for the American River steelhead is to keep them over the summer and into the fall at the McKelmy hatchery, and then send them back to the American River hatchery later this year when the temperatures have improved on the American.
Got it, thank you.
Where is that I mean, that's 70 plus degree water. Where is that?
So that's
At Nimbus or?
that's measured at Nimbus, yes.
That's crazy.
Okay, next slide, please. So the staff recommends adoption of the urban plan with submittal to the Department of Water Resources within 30 days, and that is required by the Urban Water Management Planning Act. And last slide, please. So lastly, the district's urban water management plan requires the review, detailed analysis, compile data of almost every department in the district, and our project team especially appreciates the contributions during a pandemic season for almost the last 2 years in finalizing this important water resource document. I'm happy to take any more questions or comments.
John, go ahead.
First, I'll make a motion for 19.1. Question, we've been receiving, I've been out, well, we've all been out doing a lot of presentations in Zoom and now in some cases in person. And almost invariably, I get the question of desalinization, and yes, it is in the study here talking about that. Have we explored to help maybe make it less controversial, the decarbonization of desalinization like they're doing in Australia using both wind and tidal motion for energy production to order actually reduce the amount of carbon intensity that desal requires from natural sources? And I know we've looked at the plant at the old Dow plant in Pittsburgh as a potential site, which has the islands up there with high winds in the delta, and you have tidal motion. So is that being part of the discussion, or are we not even advanced that far? All I can tell people is, yes, there's discussions going on, and it's been going on for a long time, and that's about all I can tell people when they ask.
Yeah, and Mike could probably go into more detail. I mean, certainly the first discussion is whether or not it makes sense right now for our portfolio. And then, subsequently, if it does, then, where are you going to find the power, and, how can you decarbonize that power? Certainly, the technology has improved, and it's more efficient, but still very energy intensive. Mike, is there more to that?
There have been some additional studies related to power for desalination plants in the Bay Area. They have been looking at alternative forms of energy to use at those facilities.
The East Bay MUD has been tracking the regional desalination project development, and really the lead agencies on that are some of the other Bay Area agencies. East Bay MUD is still at the table paying attention, but we're not driving it. As Clifford mentioned, we have other alternatives that we're pursuing ahead of possible desalination.
That's good to hear. I'd like to get some studies online if they can be sent to me so I can look at them. And also considering what Marin County is facing, whether they ever ask to have a pipeline put across, that may be part of their solution down the road. And so that water then would be wheeled into our system and become part of our supply, even though it may not be a net increase in our supply. So, but I'll be curious to see what those studies show.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have a motion. Want to get a second before we?
Second.
Okay, Bill Patterson seconds. Andy, I saw your hand.
Yes, I would like to comment on some of the concerns raised by the Sport Fishing Alliance, and I think it is a fair criticism of this tool. We have, but it's not necessarily a fair criticism of the district. I think that the district staff and our board have made policy choices fairly consistently to strive for ambitious conservation, for maximizing our conservation, to use tools such as rationing when we need to avoid the worst impacts of a drought and that would impact the environment. I think we are doing a lot, and while that is hard to reconcile with a simple forecast of water demand that you would see in that water demand chapter 3 on page 35 of the plan. It does certainly tell a different story when you look at it that way. But I believe that our story is the one that is with all of the pieces put together. So when you look at the water conservation chapter, it shows all of the different efforts that we're engaged in. When you look at the water recycling chapter, it shows what we're engaged in. And when you see it as a whole, I see that picture. I hope that in a future version of this document that we can find a way to reconcile those stories, because they do seem to tell different stories depending on what chapter you're actually looking at. But I feel like I'm not alarmed by the forecasted demand for 2025, and I'm comfortable looking at this at our next update to this plan. But I do hope that we do better before we get to that forecasted demand in 2050. That I think we will need to be doing better to be good stewards to the environment. But I do thank the California Sport Fishing Alliance for their comment, because I think it is important to tell that story clearly and consistently throughout the document, so that the full story makes sense to the public. A second comment I'd like to share is, while I had expressed some concerns at a prior board meeting about the revised drought planning sequence and the stages, I fully resolved those concerns through a discussion with the staff. I appreciate the reverse engineering that they've gone through to make sure that our drought planning sequence will have a resilient response to the drought and balances some of the environmental needs for preserving the cold water pool on the McCullumee River for the fishery that we're the stewards of. It's still, my interest to minimize the amount of events that we have when we use Freeport. So as we take down the trigger for stage 1 and modify the triggers for our advanced or the beginning stages of drought, I would not necessarily always be automatically looking to use Freeport for a minor deviation below that threshold, which is the policy is not an automatic. It is a guideline, and it's for board deliberation. So we could evaluate how deficient in our water supply we would be at that time. So the addition of 2 years over a 94-year planning sequence seemed, it's unfortunate that that's the way, from my understanding, that the Bureau has structured our Freeport contract to not be reliable enough and to need to design our drought program in this way. But I think, given all of the constraints in the water system, that this is what makes sense to me. So I thank the staff for explaining this through discussions offline.
Yes, Frank.
I appreciate very much all the work that went into creating this, but I have one bit of frustration, and it's not that the story isn't told well to us, but regrettably, it's not being told well outside of these halls. And just recently, over the past couple of weeks, I had a constituent just beat me up good about how we're doing a rotten job on drought management, doing a rotten job on our urban management supply. And I tried to point out the things that are here in this, and it's like, well, I don't want to hear about the way things were 20 years ago when they were wasteful. What are you doing now? And it's sort of like, what have you done for me lately? So, Kelly, I see you there. Hi. We've got to get this story out. We just got to get this story out. And I'm not sure how to do it, whether it's something on PBS where we do a half-hour thing for them, or I don't know what. But the story isn't getting out. And that's unfortunate, because staff is doing a really terrific job.
Well, if I can, to tie off what Frank said, this is an idea. It came actually from my wife, not from me. And maybe, we do our ward briefings, and those are to elected officials, and maybe through Nextdoor and Facebook, each director can have its own ward briefing for the public to talk about these issues invite the people through Nextdoor and Facebook to talk. I mean, if somebody, I'm willing to do that, and
Well, that's what I did last year, actually, and we need to think much more creatively and strategically, maybe put more resources into figuring out how to get the turnout that we'd want at something like that. I mean, I was looking forward to it. I ended up being kind of disappointed by the number of people that attended.
Was this to the general public?
Yeah, I did my ward. I invited the public to my ward briefing.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
We all did online ward briefings. I had the public affairs staff do some public turnout, and I just think we just need to think more about how to, do that. Of course, we didn't have a drought declaration at that time. Right. People were focused on COVID, so it might not have been time. But I think that's I think what Frank is saying and what you're saying, John, or both make sense, is to be able to sort of tell this story, both what's in our control and also how we respond and adapt to sort of the changing circumstances that we face, and that the only thing that we really know about this plan and forecast is that it's not going to be what's written on the page.
That's right.
Right? It's not going to be that. This is what we best think it's going to be right now, today, and in today we know a whole lot more than we did 2 years ago about what we can do online with the public and et cetera, thanks to COVID, right? That's going to change how people think about these issues too, and we need to, capitalize on it.
I mean, we have a great story to tell, and staff has done a phenomenal job over the years for giving us options and choices and guiding us. And ultimately, we decide the policy and they implement, the staff implements, but if it wasn't for their vision, we wouldn't be able to be talking about some of the stuff that we have in the book here today for going towards the future. I'm out doing a lot of presentations online, granted, but there's a lot of interest. In the last month and a half, it's increased dramatically due to the drought. Before it was rates, and now it's drought. And it's going to be that way until October, November, till hopefully the rains begin again.
John, was your motion for 19.1 only or both?
We didn't have a presentation on 2, but if I don't know if you want them, I can do both, or they can be separated. Either.
We should do them separately. I think that's good. I don't know if there's a...
Alice, you've got a tough job ahead of you. And it's not that you're not doing it well. It's just, so I think you just heard from all of us. Anything we can do, we want to help.
We definitely agree, to do more, and I think you've seen our discussions about the strategic communications plan, and then also in advance of the budget workshop, we really appreciate all the board members going out there in the public and talking about not just the rates, but we've kind of weaved in some of the other stories. And then we also started the speaker series, and the first one was about the drought and our water supply, and it was very well attended. And we're going to continue that through the year. So we're going to work on that and other things to get the message out. But there's definitely the interest out there. And, Kelly's group has done a really good job advertising this, and we got good turnout for the first one, and we expect to continue to get good turnout.
It's been my experience that 2 things. One is you try to go to where the people are as opposed to bringing the people to you. Yeah. And second, you take advantage of crises, for lack of a better word, but people have a higher interest in water and drought. They're being pummeled with messages on TV all the time, reminders of that, and we should take advantage of that, obviously, to be able to talk not just about the drought, but all the other things that we do about that. So I think we have a real opportunity this next year. Any other comments? All right, so on item 19.1, then, adopting the UWMP 2020 in compliance with the Act. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries unanimously. Do we have a separate presentation or anything for item 19.2?
We don't have a separate presentation for 19.2. This was something that it was part of the plan and it was discussed numerous times with the modifications to the triggers and the guidelines that we've discussed at prior meetings. So unless there's additional questions, certainly Lena, Mike Tognelli, and I can answer.
On 19.
We don't have a presentation.
All right. Well,
I would move 19.2.
okay. Motion by Director McIntosh. Seconded by Director Young. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously.
Thank you,
All right.
Lena, for a great presentation.
Thank you, Lena, and all the staff for work on this.
Thank you, Lena. And
See you in 5 years.
There's that, isn't there? That should worry you.
Just kidding.
Okay. Moving on. Well, I do want to say today's, for me, is a very special day. It is my 1-year anniversary as general manager to this day.
All right.
It's the first time in a year that I had the entire board in the boardroom. And I'll also say, when I told my wife yesterday that today was my 1-year anniversary, she reminded me again that I'm not the general manager at home. So, but
you are here.
But I am here, and I'm going to take advantage every minute while I'm here that I'm general manager. So anyway, moving on, I have 2 items for today. The first is an update on our drought activities, and these are updates since the last board meeting. It includes our latest water supply projections, changes to our CVP allocation, a discussion of our plans for this year and future years if the drought continues, and our customer outreach activities. And we have Mike Tognellini and Alice Tui, Manager of Water Conservation, to make the presentation.
Good afternoon, President Linney and members of the board. It's a pleasure to see you all in person today. Just an update on the drought. First of all, our water supply projections for the year are pretty much fixed at this point. Our median condition end of September storage projection is 425,000 acre feet, and don't expect that to change at this point in the season. Yeah. And not surprisingly, there, let me go back. Not surprisingly, we have no snow remaining in the watershed, and therefore no snow water content. And the California Department of Water Resources Bulletin 120 forecast puts us at 219,000 acre feet of runoff under median conditions. That is the second lowest runoff in our records. An update on our Central Valley project allocations. On May 26th, we received an allocation under a letter from the Bureau of Reclamation that our allocation would be reduced from 73,150 acre feet down to 24,938 acre feet, which corresponds to about an 18.75% annual allocation. We did immediately have some follow-up conversations with Reclamation about that allocation, and including a letter that we wrote proposing that our allocation should be increased to 25%. And on June 11th, the Bureau of Reclamation increased our allocation to 33,250 acre feet, or 25%. So that was an 8,000 acre foot increase in our allocation that's happened since the last board meeting.
So Mike, I just want to take a moment to pause and thank you and the team for that. It's no small accomplishment to make that happen and make sure that we came up with that idea to push it.
Much appreciated, and it was not simple to get the Bureau to change its mind about something, but in this case we made a compelling case.
Revolutionary to get the Bureau to change its mind about anything.
So
in the right direction.
In order to get that increase, we did agree with Reclamation that we would wait until September 15th before starting our diversions at Freeport. So we anticipate that from that point forward, we'll have enough time to divert the 33,000 acre feet that we have planned for diversion this year under stage 1. I did want to provide an additional update. It occurred late last week, so I didn't have time to include it in the presentation, and that is that we received notice of unavailability from the State Water Resources Control Board on our McKellamie River water rights, not unexpected. And that is the first step that will lead ultimately to a curtailment notice that may come in the weeks ahead. But at this point, East Bay Mud is not diverting any water into storage. The water that flows into the reservoir is being released downriver and then some. And all of the water that's being diverted for our customers' use is coming out of our storage. So there is no impact at all expected when curtailment occurs in the weeks ahead here.
Will it have any impact on other water systems? I mean, it's the same, I guess I'm wondering, given that there's no snow, there's no more runoff, how do curtailment orders impact anybody at this point?
Well, any water user that doesn't have their own storage would be diverting directly from the river. So those users would have to reduce.
I see.
And I just wanted to, as a reminder about our East Bay Mud drought plan, that we design our plan, and the urban water management plan that you all just approved is really designed to address a multi-year drought. And we're in the initial stage of that drought, stage 1, the first year that we've implemented under this current drought. We're planning for the years ahead, for next year and the year after. And all the actions that we've taken, the demand reductions, the supplemental supplies are all aimed toward that. And the plan is set up to combine supplemental supply and demand management at the same time. The actions escalate as drought conditions worsen. And of course, we've learned from previous events, and that's why we've made some modifications to our plan, as you all have just approved. And it's important to recognize and for the public to understand that we've made major investments in drought infrastructure, particularly the Freeport project, but that's not the only investment we've made. And our recycle water program, our conservation program, other examples of programs that we've put in place over many years and decades to respond to drought. That we're not just seeing this drought for the first time, and the public should understand that we have a plan and we're implementing that plan. And this is not anything different than what we would have expected to happen in year 1 of a drought.
Do we have a paper, a single sheet paper probably would do it. If we had done nothing since Part E was built in this local storage reservoirs, where we would be today from a standpoint of water rationing in impact to our communities versus the investments we've made with recycled water and other sources of water such as Freeport, it's cost us money to do that, and we're paying, the payoff is we're having additional supplies one way or the other. But do we have anything that, so somebody says, well, you've done nothing, and go, yeah, we have, we've done this. Had we done nothing since 1960 or whatever, this is the shape we'd be in today. It might be a good talking point if
I don't think we do have anything that I'm aware of that would fit that description.
I would be interested if there's a way to have, again, it's a single sheet of paper. If we'd done nothing since Pardee and Briones and Upper San Leandro, those reservoirs were built, and we're facing the situation we are today, where would we be from a standpoint of supply? And where would we be looking at in terms of rationing? And then going forward, I mean, again, Freeport and recycled water are making a difference for our customers. And a lot of people don't understand that.
And maybe where we can start, because it would take some analysis to say where we would have been had we not done that, but maybe where we can start is in a single page. Here are all the things we've done in the last 4 decades on a single page, and that would kind of imply all the things that, bad things that could have happened if we didn't do it. That would be something. I'd just be concerned of trying to do all the what ifs would be quite a bit of analysis.
A lot of what ifs. I mean, again, how much have we increased our supply availability by what we've done?
Yeah, and we could do something like that.
I think we could take a photograph, the 1977 photograph of Pardee Reservoir,
the towers and the dirt,
and compare that to where we are today.
Yeah.
With a similar water year.
Right. Okay, then I just wanted to.
I would also add, I think that story should include an explanation of recycling and conservation, if it wasn't clear.
Absolutely.
East Bay Mud water quality. So I just wanted to remind the board that customers may notice a different taste when Freeport is operated. We're going to start in September. That water will be treated and delivered to our customers. Our customers are used to a single source of water. So although they may be tasting something that's different, it doesn't mean it's any less safe. The water that we provide to our customers will be safe. During drought, we do have other considerations, increased threat of algae blooms. But I do want to recognize and remind the board that we have invested significantly, $49 million just in recent years to address taste and odor issues with adding ozone at USL and Sobrante. So is that going to resolve all taste and odor issues? Can't say that. But this will go a long way to improving conditions on where we were even in the last drought in 2014, 2015.
So my constituents have already experienced a different taste and smell.
Mine too.
So that's from the algae blooms, correct?
Yes, there are some algae blooms, and in previous years, prior to these investments, we didn't have the same capacity to address it. So we do know that people have noticed the algae blooms, and we probably expect to see some more this year. But the capabilities we have at Sobrante and USL have really minimized the number of complaints, although we do hear those complaints. The ability to apply ozone, and we also have peroxide as well to deal with taste and odor, so we can put in what they call peroxone to really knock down the taste and odor. So much improvement since the last drought.
Do we have the ability, because you told me, Clifford, that folks would just call in to complain. Do we have the ability to address an issue like that through Nextdoor?
Maybe Kelly, you can respond to that.
Yes, so we have tried to proactively message about taste and odor on our website to have a notice up saying you may notice a change. And then we've been working very closely with system water quality so that when they do get complaints, we send out some targeted messages in those areas once we kind of see what the affected zones are.
What kind of targeted messages? I mean, in what form of medium?
Yeah, so we've used Nextdoor a number of times because we're able to generally get a sense of where the complaints are coming from. And so we kind of, I think we have access to 850 different neighborhoods, I think, throughout the service area. And so we're able to drill down a little bit. And we may have even have used WaterSmart, but I'd have to go back and check. That's the email, like the direct email.
Right.
Yeah.
But so did that happen in this instance?
I believe, yes.
In West County?
I believe so, but I'd have to double check with Dave Briggs and Mona.
The social media went out explaining the event.
Right.
We didn't take a lot of intake from social media.
Right.
All right. I just want to be clear, so we're speaking the same language. So the social media went out. David, what does that mean?
Well, we post on.
We accessed Nextdoor.
Well, we generally post something on, Twitter and Facebook, although I'd have to go back and look at this exact incident because there have been some waves of complaints that come in, but we often post on Nextdoor or Facebook and Twitter if it's a major event, because those are very broad. Those are going out district-wide, and so we have to be a little careful about how we calibrate those.
Sure.
And so we do try to zero in on Nextdoor.
Yeah. Okay, you try to, but
Yes.
I would. Can you send me a memo or something letting me know exactly what happened in this instance?
The most recent instance.
Okay.
Sure.
And then my question, sort of to follow up on that, is do we wait for a complaint before we respond, or do we preempt? I mean, I know you don't want to tell people their water's going to taste bad, and then they taste and they say, "Oh, my water tastes bad," when they otherwise wouldn't notice it. But
they wouldn't notice.
Because, well, some people. I mean, I've had people in my neighborhood is impacted by this where I live, and I have neighbors 2 blocks away who complain about a change, and I don't notice it because it's a genetic thing, right? It's like how your taste and odor receptors are. But if we could anticipate it, I just don't. I know it's valid.
And at least be ready for it when it happens.
So there's a few things that we do, and David can probably add color to this as well. But we have staff out at the treatment plants, every day sniffing and tasting the water to see if they detect something coming into the plant before it goes out to the public.
Are they super sniffers?
They are the super sniffers.
There is one, yes.
Yeah, we do have the super sniffers out there. And so you've probably seen emails from me sometimes where I send, we've detected something, or we've heard from the customers.
Right.
And so when you hear that from me, it's either we're letting you know in advance of a customer complaint, and sometimes I hear back from you that you haven't heard anything, but we want to make you aware of it. And then if we think it's a broad issue, and I think this happened in a prior year, we do try to get out ahead of it to let people know that this is potentially coming. In other instances, like the most recent incident, we had the super sniffers out there, and it happened very quickly, and so they didn't detect it until our customers detected it, but it was a handful of customers, and then I updated the board that this was occurring, and then we'll get the particulars about this incident. But Kelly's staff was aware of it, Dave's staff was aware of it, and they were all coordinating, communicating to develop a message for the public.
Yeah, and that's all well and fine. I want the message to be sent to the community that's being that's experiencing
Yes.
the taste and odor changes, and I think the only way we can do that is through Nextdoor. So I'm hoping going forward, it might have happened this time, that we can target the neighborhood where it's coming from through Nextdoor at the very least. HOAs, I keep hammering this, HOAs don't get our literature because we don't get bills. Our HOA gets the bill. Homeowners don't get the bill. So we're missing an opportunity here, and I just want us to get it right going forward.
And
And
apartment houses
that's all I have
don't
to
get
say
it.
about that.
And apartment houses don't get it either.
Correct.
And renters, and lots of people,
Yeah.
and electronic bill payers don't get it either.
So again, we'll look at this particular incident, but I know, talking to Kelly and her staff, that they are leveraging Nextdoor because you do get a broader audience that you can also pinpoint on the particular areas without going too broad and just letting lots of people know that may not be affected, but just those areas are affected. But we'll get you an update in the memo with details.
Thank you.
And I just want to add one detail on being proactive. As Clifford mentioned, there's various daily monitoring that happens by our super sniffers and by our average sniffers, different people that can try to get it as it's leaving the plant. We also have data at the lake. We look at the lake about every 2 weeks, and we profile it to see what the water looks like. And we have some diagnostics of water coming into the plant in real time. This particular event went from very low to extremely high in about a day or 2 days. It really caught us by surprise, and we reacted as quickly as we could.
No, that's great, but I want the people affected to hear what's going on.
Yes, thank you.
My people.
Okay, I'm going to turn this over to Alice Toohey, who's going to cover our conservation and outreach program.
Thank you, Mike, and good afternoon, President Linney and members of the board. It's really nice to see you all and to be here in person in the boardroom where I don't have to worry about my cat interrupting the presentation. So I'm going to be talking today about our messaging and outreach related to the drought. But before I jump into that, our sort of communication strategy and planning, I did want to kind of take a step back and just remind everyone a little bit of what we mean when we say 10% and what goes into that. Because there are some factors that go into that that affect how we're planning our communication in terms of the types of messaging that we're doing and how we're getting that word out. So just a reminder, when we say 10%, where are the savings coming from? Most of that savings is going to come from reducing outdoor water use. That's what we consider to be discretionary. You can see this picture here in the upper right-hand corner. That is my nemesis. That is people overwatering to the point that there's runoff. We do also want to have a little bit of a focus on indoor water use. It tends to be a lot more efficient these days than it used to be because of updates to code and because of the success of our own rebate programs. But we do certainly want to get the message out to customers about how their behavior in terms of taking shorter showers, making sure that they do full loads in the dishwasher and clothes washer, how that can have an effect. And then leaks, of course, are a very important potential source of savings. There are a lot of leaks out there in the system, so we want to work with our customers to find those and resolve them. And just for your edification, this photo in the lower right-hand corner is just a screenshot of our leak resolution tool. If a leak alert goes out to our customers, they can click a link to go to this resolution tool, and it walks them through identifying some of the more likely sources of household leaks. So like you can see here, there's some information on how to check your toilet and for a leak, and even a little video so that customers can watch. So what does a 10% reduction mean for our customers? Well, just as a reminder to everyone, 10% is a district-wide goal. So that's looking at water use across our service area, across all our customer classes. But as I said before, one of our main sort of sources of savings is going to be irrigation. So how we break that 10% down by customer class, it's going to vary by customer class. For example, if we're saying a 10% goal, that might mean that we really need to get 15% from single-family irrigation. It might mean we need 20 or even 30% from our irrigation-only accounts or from parks and medians. And it might mean a smaller amount for multifamily residential customers or commercial customers who have less of that outdoor discretionary water use. Again, the focus on outdoor irrigation does mean that we hope to see more conservation in the summer than in the winter. That's when we think the bulk of our savings will come through. And it does mean that some of our residential customers will probably need to be conserving more than others. And just a reminder, we do have our excessive use penalty ordinance for extreme water users, and we're going to be going through a process with the board over the next few months to update that ordinance to incorporate stage 2 droughts and bring it into conformance with state law. And then for our super savers, our customers who are very efficient, who are doing a great job of using water efficiently, the message to them is just keep up the good work, spread the news, but just keep on doing what you're doing. Now, all that being said, that's kind of a lot to fit into a tweet. So in terms of the actual sort of messaging to our customers, what we're specifically asking them to do, we really feel that it's less important to focus on like whether it's 10%, 15%, 20%, less important to focus on those numbers, and more important to be really succinct and clear in our messaging on what the actual ask is, the behaviors we want to see. And if you kind of look at it across our customer classes, there's really 3 things that we're looking for. The first is we want all of our customers to be irrigating efficiently. So, and all of these points can be broken down into a lot more detail, but irrigating efficiently, that means you're not watering your lawn more than 3 times a week, you're avoiding runoff and overspray, you're setting your irrigation timer to run in the morning or night to reduce evaporation. We want all of our customers to be finding and fixing leaks, whether that's a homeowner who might have a toilet that's leaking and wasting a few gallons a day, or a big industrial customer who might have a larger leak that that wastes hundreds of gallons a day. And we want all of our customers to be mindful of indoor use. As I said before, indoor use does tend to be a lot more efficient than it used to be. So here the message to our customers is that idea of being mindful about it. Just being aware of how long a shower you're taking, really making sure you're running those full loads in the dishwasher and clothes washer, making sure that you're teaching your kids to turn the water off when they're brushing their teeth, that kind of thing. So in terms of how this sort of rolls out, and just to kind of circle back to something that Mike mentioned earlier, our drought management program, our plans do prepare us for multi-year droughts, and we're keeping that in mind as we're sort of developing our outreach approach. You'll see the little red arrow, you are here, we are in the first year of a drought. We do historically tend to see there's a period of ramping up where we're getting the messaging out and customers are kind of getting back into that drought mindset. But historically, as we get into these multi-year droughts, especially in the second, third, or later years of droughts, our customers always respond. They tend to kind of overperform from a conservation perspective. So in the first year, again, we're looking at sort of ramping up our messaging and outreach. Potentially, as we head into the second year, adjusting messaging if there's a different stage, or if we go to mandatory rationing, or if there's directives coming from the state, and then just continuing to sustain and intensify that outreach. So talking a little bit about what this means in terms of our messaging, our conservation programs, and then our outreach approach. Conservation and Public Affairs have been working on, we're launching our campaign to make every drop count. As you'll see in the next few slides, we've been getting a ton of media attention, lots of interviews, lots of press requests for information, but we're going to be starting to tell that story that we were discussing a moment ago through a more of an enhanced social media campaign, and also doing some advertising that's really targeted to try to get those messages out to our customers. And just over the past few weeks for water conservation, our focus has been, we've developed some outreach materials for cities and counties. We have letters that are, I believe, going to be hopefully signed by our board president that are going to go out to city elected officials. We also have letters from our general manager that are going to be going out to city staff, general managers, public works. And you can see here we've put together a brochure that gives cities some high-level information on what they can do to save water and how they can help their residents save water. And I just want to mention we've also put together a short slide deck. It's, I think, 6 or 7 slides for doing presentations to cities, counties, other public agencies. So if any of you are out in the public and you would like access to that slide deck, please let us know. We can make that available to you. It's meant to be something that's sort of broadly, can be used broadly. We're also looking into this issue that was discussed a moment ago in terms of how we do outreach to our multifamily residential customers. That's always a little bit of a challenge for us since those folks don't necessarily have an account. We might not have their email address, phone number. So we're looking at some ways both through social media and also evaluating whether there's the potential to do some kind of direct mailing campaign where maybe we would develop a postcard and send it to all those residents to let them know about the drought. And then, of course, in water conservation, it's important for us to maintain our service levels to match the increasing customer interest in our program. And we're also evaluating some enhancements to some of our programs to try to make them a little more attractive. We're looking later this summer to launch a pilot. We're calling it our Super Rebate program that's got some enhancements to our lawn rebate program to kind of encourage folks who are interested in doing those projects to take a more sustainable approach. As I mentioned, in terms of social media and media outreach, there have been 60 drought interviews with local media in 2021 so far. That's a lot, so there's definitely a lot of interest in this. There was a post recently, a Twitter post, a Facebook and Twitter post on water use related to flushing that garnered a lot of impressions and likes. And I think that speaks to the fact that our customers are very interested in hearing what we're doing. So I think we're going to be looking for opportunities to tell that story as well. So it's not just, hey, customers, we're asking you to find and fix leaks, but here are all the things we're doing at EBMUD to conserve water. Community outreach, this past Wednesday was, as Clifford mentioned, was the first part of the speaker series where Dave Briggs and Mike Tongolini talked about our water supply. The next Wednesday speaker series event will be July 21st. Water conservation staff are going to be talking about the drought. What are you going to do about it? I've been told by public affairs we need to make that fun, and I'm an engineer, so that's a heavy lift for me. But we're gonna try. We're gonna see what we can do. And altogether, district staff have done 28 drought presentations to date, and I can definitely say that interest is picking up. We're getting a lot of requests in water conservation, and I know public affairs is as well. And if you, again, if you receive any kinds of requests, if you need any materials, please let us know. We're happy to, put things together.
Well, I think a Spotify playlist of 3-minute shower songs or 5-minute shower songs, both for kids and adults, and teenagers especially, actually, would be great. 3 minutes, well, we say, don't we? No, I do a 3-minute shower, but 5 minutes is what that
5 minutes is, I think, what we recommend. Yeah, and that's an idea that's come up, and I think we've talked about that could also be a fun social media campaign because we could launch the playlist and we can also ask customers to suggest the songs that they listen to.
Add, but the thing with Spotify is that people can add to the playlist.
Oh, okay. As well. Cool. Yeah, we can definitely look into that. Yeah, I think, as we talk about the messaging, one thing we've been aware of is, obviously the drought is very serious, it's very important, but we do want to try to, in our messaging right now, take an approach that's a little more uplifting and fun where we can, because we do, the last year has been so heavy and there's been so much for folks to deal with. We do want to try to kind of break through that and get their attention. So next steps, Mike so operations and water and natural resources are going to be finalizing the Freeport diversion schedule and working with Contra Costa Water District on a possible 2,000 acre-foot transfer. As I mentioned, we're going to be coming to the board over the next few months to talk about updating the excessive use penalty ordinance. I believe we're going to be starting with a planning committee presentation in July, and then coming to the full board probably as part of the general manager's report, I think in August, to do a presentation to the full board with the goal of then, starting the formal adoption process for updating that ordinance in August and September. And then I think Mike has talked about this a little bit, we are beginning work with potential water transfer partners looking at 2022, if it continues to be dry, having permitting and agreements in place for water transfers. So are there any questions, thoughts?
Thank you, Alice.
Okay, thank you.
And then for our last presentation, it's just an update on our COVID response. Our employee vaccination rate has improved significantly since the last report, but we are going to continue to make efforts to educate our employees and get them vaccinated. Also, yesterday was the first day for some of our employees to return to work. We are taking a very slow and thoughtful approach, and Dave Briggs will talk about that and the other activities that are going on.
Okay, thanks, Clifford. Good afternoon, President Linney, members of the board. So the first couple weeks of June and last week of May, what we've seen from the state, California Public Health, Cal OSHA, the governor, both in his remarks to the media as well as his executive orders, and then our local counties, all of those activities culminating in the actions that went up into, I think, last Thursday and Friday have thankfully been a consistent approach from county all the way up to state with COVID regulations. So that has very much helped us implement protocols here and made things very, very clear. But things were very crazy there for a while earlier in the spring. So where has that left us? So things have substantially changed. It's just been a few weeks, but thinking about where we are right now here in the boardroom, it's really remarkable that many of the safety protocols that we've been living with for 16 months are no longer with us. Social distancing, occupancy limits, carpooling is allowable with few restrictions. Face coverings and mask wearing is not required if you've been vaccinated. Is required if you're unvaccinated indoors. And even though the state does not require face coverings outside if you are unvaccinated, at the district we are requiring face coverings outside if you are unvaccinated if you're within 6 feet of another person. We do a lot of work outside. We do a lot of work in close quarters, sometimes in confined space. So we're being extra conservative and going above state protocol outside for the time being. But still, many restrictions have very and only recently been removed. But still, some remain. We still have a plan here. Every organization needs a COVID response plan. We still need one of those. There's still rules if an outbreak happens at your organization or workplace, and we still have the symptom self-checks that we administer every morning before we enter the workplace. So many things still remain. As well as the state emergency declaration and county emergency declaration. Your own emergency declaration back in March of 2020 is still in effect, and many executive orders still remain, not the least of which are the ones that extend the moratorium on shutoffs through the end of September, and the Brown Act revisions, which are in effect through the end of September. So we're still in a state of emergency. We're rotating to a more manageable state of the pandemic, a less intense period of the pandemic, but we're still in a pandemic here. For our own employees, we had a positive last week, our first one in June, so we've had one through June 21st, and that employee was partially vaccinated and contracted the virus offsite by visiting a relative. But other than that, as you can see from the chart at the bottom, a significant reduction. That one employee is still isolating, and a half dozen or so employees are quarantining or not feeling well after receiving the vaccine. So we're seeing what we want to see here, but we still have a case here and there. Okay, so Clifford was mentioning this, and these numbers, the top row there, the district fully vaccinated rate, that was, I believe, from last Friday morning when we put the package out, maybe Thursday night, early Friday morning. That number is now 63%. Wow. And there's three reasons for that, I think. One is that our face covering policy, which I mentioned earlier, it incentivizes you to get at least to fill out your documentation and or get vaccinated, because you will be rewarded, like we all are in here, where you can take your face covering off if you've been fully vaccinated. Second, we have the return of telecommuters. So if you were at home full-time telecommuting, maybe you got vaccinated a couple of months ago, maybe you weren't motivated to fill out your form because you weren't at work anyway. Well, now you are. So that's probably another reason why we saw a 7 or 8% increase in this number in just a matter of days. And then the last reason is just plain and simply for general purposes. In all demographics, people are continuing to get vaccinated, but at a relatively slow rate. You see the other numbers there for the counties around here. Alameda County, Contra Costa County, these numbers are about a week old, so they're probably a couple % higher at this point. Keep in mind that the Bay Area has the highest vaccination rates in the country. So we're in good company here. These numbers are only based on documentation that we have received. So even though our updated 63% number is probably still an undercount because not everyone has filled out their form yet. I think they will. So this will continue to rise. We are continuing to work with employees to educate, to bring information to them about addressing vaccine hesitancy, which we all know is for a variety of reasons. And so because of that, we're trying to bring new voices to this dialogue, not the same voices over and over again, because everyone's got a different reason, everyone's got a different story. And so some folks in the SMT are gonna really chime in and help us try to diversify our messaging so we can try to move the needle here, so to speak, figuratively and literally, and get higher vaccination rates. One of our more innovative ideas is through Contra Costa County. They have a mobile vaccine van or crew, and we've invited them to come to a couple of our work sites. So we're hoping they will come by and make it that much more convenient for our employees at some of our big work centers in Contra Costa County. Alameda County hasn't done this yet, but I suspect they will shortly. I mean, we're trying to make this as convenient as possible.
David, there may be, to send out to the employees in general, I think it was on CNN today, an IT department in the state of Florida, 2 people died from the new variant, and 4 or 5 contacted it. One person who did not get it was the one person who was vaccinated in the department. So it's a more deadly variant, and again, 2 people died, it was reported today, and the only person who did not come down with it actually had the vaccination.
Wow. And all the other people were not vaccinated?
It's all right, there's a lot of people out there that still believe that, you know, it's a hoax perpetrated by politicians.
Hey, where I was vacationing, that's definitely the dominant, you know, they're happy to not have to be wearing masks and social distancing anymore, but, you know.
They weren't anyways.
Right, no, but now they're not, now they're.
Yeah, and that is definitely part of the education that we have for our employees. I mean, we've all heard about the Delta variant. There's certainly articles now about the Gamma variant that's out there as well. So that's why we're also taking a much more conservative approach. If you're not vaccinated, you wear a mask, right, because we don't want to risk an employee-to-employee transmission.
I think the best part about being vaccinated is being able to sit down with family, especially the ones you haven't seen for over 15 months.
Absolutely. So this is also a special week here as we begin to welcome back some folks who've been fully telecommuting for 16 months or so. As we phase this group back, this is in having them come back 1 to 2 days a week, beginning this week. And that is also, that slow pace is also superimposed with our carpet replacement program in this building, which is stretching this out even further and will probably take 4 to 5 months to really get everybody back. That's how long the carpet project will take. So as of, yeah, it just turned out that way. So as of today or yesterday, we only have 1 floor done. So that's the 5th floor. So those folks have been coming back, and the other 8 floors of the building will be coming back in a phased way up through November. So this will take a while. And we don't want these telecommuters to come back until they've had their carpet replaced. It is a huge inconvenience to have your office or your workspace cleared up, moved up, boxed away, moved somewhere else. Yeah, so come back when your carpet is done. So that's going to stretch things up.
Risha, didn't you say that was going to be done to all of our offices on this floor?
But during, we rejiggered the schedule so that it's.
I moved all my junk out.
Yeah, it's going to happen while you're on, when the board is out, between July and August.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Back to Zoom.
So just another metric to throw out. Early on in the pandemic, in March and April, when people transitioned to telecommuting, we would have occupancy levels in this building of about 10%. Generally speaking, over the last 15 months or so, 14 months, it's bounced between 15 and 20. Today, it only got to 25%. So in terms of our occupancy level in this building. So it is coming up, but rather slowly. We're keeping an open door policy for employees who want to come to us with concerns about childcare issues that are related to the pandemic, such as schools or camps that are still closed and having issues there. So we want to keep an open door and hear those employees and figure out work out some type of schedule with them. And then HR is handling any employee who may have a medical issue with respect to coming back early from telecommuting. They will have a conversation with HR to see if any accommodation can be made there. And as we progress and transition, we are moving towards eventually a long-term telecommuting plan, and so we're staying consistent with that. And this is the first step towards getting people back, and eventually we will land in this long-term telecommuting place. And so we've just taken one step towards that. We've heard lots of concerns over the past few months, and I just wanted to communicate this to the board. And as we've heard these concerns, and they're not just from Local 2019, they're also from Local 444 and 21 and 39 and individual employees and managers. So it's not just 2019, but the bulk of the concerns that have been expressed to me have come from 2019. And as we've heard them, we have addressed them and responded through emails, through EOT messages, through revisions to our Safe Return to Workplace plan, through one-on-one conversations. So we have this open dialogue going on over the past few months, and it'll remain open. But just for your reference, there have been questions about the building safety. How often do we clean? How does the ventilation work? Do I have a place to park? How many people are going to be in here? Is it going to be too crowded? What's the face covering policy, which has been kind of a bouncing ball for the past 6 weeks or so, but it's finally calmed down into something coherent. How does contact tracing work when you've been vaccinated? Is social distancing still around? So a myriad of questions that we've been able to answer over the past few weeks. As I mentioned prior, we're continuing to speak to employees if they have any accommodation needs on a one-on-one basis. And we've told supervisors that if there's some type of alternative work schedule in play right now, whether it's a 410 or a staggered start time, or alternative work times, those can remain in place if it's working for the employee, and if it's working for the supervisor, they're certainly permitted to keep going forward for the time being. Okay, so as for the board of directors, let's see, the language was superseded in 2920 by the order that the governor put out, I guess last week or the week before. So the modified Brown Act will remain in place through September 30th. Your attendance here, of course, is very appreciated and very much voluntary at this juncture. The general public is not allowed in the boardroom right now or in the building. The public or visitors can come in by appointment, but we do not have the doors open outside for people to stroll in and just enter the boardroom, and that will not occur until September 30th. And last, the board secretary will have the instructions modified on the website to inform the public how to participate. And there were some remarks earlier in the meeting, and as I'm sure you've heard, there are more people participating now and different people participating now in these types of public meetings because they can call in. And so that's probably a good thing, and I think because we already have it set up and it's more or less free, I think just about every governing board is probably going to allow this hybrid type of public participation moving forward. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? All right. That's the end of the general manager's report.
That is it.
No longer general manager. Okay. Reports and director comments. Committee reports, minutes from the June 8th, 2021 Planning Committee and the Legislative Human Resources Committee are included in the agenda packet. We'll now receive today's report from Redistricting Ad Hoc Committee and the Finance Administration Committee. I'll do the report from the Redistricting Ad Hoc Committee. This was the first in a series of meetings that we are holding to do our once every 10 years redistricting for the districts, for the wards, to even them up. We won't have the census information until October, November, probably the earliest. So right now we're kind of setting the ground rules for these, for the process that we're going to have. It's going to be a very open process, lots of notices, several, at least 4 meetings, public meetings of some sort, and we'll bring something to the board in the, I believe it was the January timeline or so that we thought of next year.
So the proposed guidelines will be coming to the board.
Oh, the
and
guidelines
the guidelines
first.
will come to the
Yeah,
board
the
first,
guidelines.
and then the redistricting efforts will happen between November and ideally February, so that we can come
So
to
it
the,
might be next year, February, before we
Yes.
see an actual proposal for that. So that was the ad hoc committee, and our next meeting is in August. Finance Administration Committee?
Yes, the Finance Committee met this morning. Many of the items that were on our agenda have already been approved in this meeting. The monthly investment transactions, of course, was approved earlier on the consent agenda. And extending the revolving credit agreements for commercial paper notes, and extending standby bond purchase agreement for water revenue bonds. Those were heard on the open agenda and all approved. It's an exciting time for this kind of input in our process going forward, seeing that all our systems are in order. That really backstops EBMUD and its ability to serve and to prevail over unforeseen circumstances going forward. That's really the crux of the Finance and Administration Committee meeting. I would like to add, though, that I listen to the radio quite a bit when I'm home now, and KCBS does an excellent job of contrasting many of the water agencies. They don't have supply. They're limited to whatever you see standing where any of their water is kept, and it's very shallow. On the other hand, they seem to let people know that EBMUD is a leader, because we get plaudits. We don't get the negative stuff so hard. And I just wanted to mention that even if water doesn't taste good somewhere, it's not like they don't have any water. And they make sure that commentary on that is heard by people. So I just wanted to commend staff for all the communication, getting all that information out, and also the commentators on their ability to decipher and to read through and to scrutinize, and so they don't come out negative against us, and that's a very positive thing. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Bill. Please submit any items for future consideration to the general manager. Any further director comments?
I wanted to thank EBMUD for being a sponsor. Yesterday, I celebrated my birthday at Sequoia Country Club. There was a golf course event by Oakland NAACP, and it was done in my name, the Bill Patterson Golf Tournament. There was a tremendous turnout, and I saw people I hadn't seen in a long time, not just the COVID thing, but far beyond that. They came out at the end, and I wanted to make sure I thanked the district. Frank Mellon was present. He played in the tournament, and it was a grand occasion. And pictures will be coming forth with all of the different groups that helped sponsor and players that played, and some of the old timers. And of course, the new cadre coming to Oakland was present. Oakland A's were represented. I coordinated the community advisory committee to the AIDS back when they went from being a low attendance baseball club to where we filled the Coliseum. So some of the people were crediting that and going back to those days that we put kids and everybody out there to see the games and whatnot. So that's my story for today. Thank you, staff. Thank you for everything. And I celebrated again my birthday, and thank you for those comments.
Happy birthday,
Happy
Bill.
birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Are you saying which birthday?
Oh, my 90th.
Wow.
Hey.
I just regret Dell isn't here to be part of this.
Indeed.
She is in a way.
Doug?
All right.
Well, to keep in the same spirit of golf, I put together an elite team for a veterans golf tournament in Castro Valley, and Mike Togolini, Andrew Lee, and Matt Awaldi were the elite team, and we were paid the best compliment of all because, you know, everybody knows how golfers are. And the guy who was running the tournament came up to us on the end and said, if I had an award, I would give you guys the award for the most honest score.
So no trophy to be presented here.
No trophy to be presented. But so thank you guys, and East Bay Mud was well represented.
All right, any other comments? Then I will announce that our next meeting of the board will be held on Tuesday, July 13th, 2021 at 1:15 p.m. This meeting is now adjourned.